Why, when you sleep, help me get back to your cheap sex and sad phones, help me get where I belong. I think you're crazy. Maybe I think you're crazy. Maybe stop sending letters when letters always get burned. It's not like the movies, they focus on little white lies. I think you're crazy, maybe. I think you're crazy, maybe. Beautiful angels torn apart at birth. Glamorous and lifeless, I hardly recognize you. I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. Oh, see you in the night sky. Lay down your head, look to your window. Where do you go when it's not where you're going? How do you see when the light isn't shining? Where you could be if you weren't out the time. How does it feel when the world comes on so real and true? How do you do the things you could do? If I were a king, early. What would I say to say what I'm saying? Would you believe the mercy left open the heart of my sleeve when the rhyming is broken? How does it feel when the world comes on so real and true? Sound me a river, and I skate away to the downstream where I did play. So easy-minded, like a hill on the sideline, tripped up and blind. Get lost in the sidelines. How does it feel when the world comes on so real and true? How do you do the things you do to you? How do you do the things you do to you? How do you do the things you do to you? I give thee all I can no more, though poor the offering be. My heart and lute are all the store that I can give to thee. A lute whose gentle song reveals the soul of love full well, and better for a heart that feels much more than lute can tell. Though love and song may fail, alas, to keep life's clouds away, at least 'twill make them lighter pass and kill them if they stay. And even if care at moments flings a discord o'er life's happy strain, oh, let love but gently touch the strings, 'twill all be sweet again. Oh, let love but gently touch the strings, will all be sweet again. Greetings, friends. Greetings. How you doing? How you doing? Let's get a drink here. Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. I decided to do a live hangout on the day being in at 9/11 or 11/9 here in our calendars, right? So yeah, I won't stay on for too. Excuse me, I won't stay on for too long. Maybe a couple of hours. I'm not really planned, so I'll talk away about a few pertinent things. I'll probably go into chat a bit more and interact there. So if there's any questions, that'd be great, because there's definitely a lot to talk about 9/11. And it's not, I never put myself forward as anyone who knows everything or whatever. I'm just presenting what I have sort of come to, I guess, understand in some senses, or to know. You know, people talk about it's not about belief, it's about belief is the thief, right? Or it's not about believing, it's knowing. Well, that's very limited. Get away. That's the dog. He's all friendly now. Come on, say hello to the dog. Come up here. Come on. Up you go. Here you go. Get over here. Look, say hello. It's Bandy. He's all friendly now. I'll tell you why he's all friendly. Get down. Well, off the chair. Who told you to get off of the chair? I'm only kidding, man. It's a bit melodrama. Just to liven up the day. Yeah, it's all around me now. I guess I can understand why. I have the ball. His three favorite things. I have the ball. I have the cheese, and I have the pig's ear. So look at him. Look, never known him to be like this. He's just all over me. Normally he's in the corner, chewing away on his bone, and get down. Yeah, but now look at him. He's all over me, and I'll smack him. I'm telling you now, get down. I know what you're about. Thinks I'm a fool. Thinks I'm a dodo. Get down. So in a few minutes, I'll sort him out with a bit of a concoction of mine. I reckon another new invention, I talked about this before, it's the simple things that give the most enjoyment, sometimes both to humans and animals. Get down. Get over there now. Hang on a second. Sit down. I'll sort you out now in a minute. Take it easy. I know what you're about. Being all friendly. Honestly, anyone who calls animals dumb animals, they're crazy, man. These people know what they're talking about. And dogs have such a great memory as well. So God knows what they know. Brandy knows here that I'm only playing a game. You know, I'd never be, it's sort of feigned indignation, if you will. Yeah, I'll sort him out with a few goodies in a few minutes. But just because my mind was on the cheese ball, yeah, brilliant idea for a dog. Dogs love cheese. They love ball. I won't show them now because they go mad. They love cheese and they love the ball, right? So my idea was, if you get a little piece of cheese, and you have a ball, right? You break off little pieces of cheese, you can get great mileage out of this because you can break up the slice of cheese in as many pieces as you choose. Like, so if you did 100 pieces, for instance, just take it off, stick it onto the ball, smudge it in, throw it out. So the dog is a double surprise. This is my thinking. He's first of all forgetting about, when the ball is involved, you forget about all food, right? So he goes chasing the ball, and in the back of his mind, or maybe not so much the back of his mind, he's been thinking about the cheese from a few seconds ago. So he gets the ball, and then he gets a funny sort of taste in his mouth. He smells the ball, and he goes, "What's this?" And he goes, "Cheese!" Cheese. Look, he's no interest in the ball now because he saw the cheese. But see, all he wants is the cheese now. But if I show him the pig's ear, that's all he wants now, right? But then I'll distract him for a minute with the ball, and he forgets about the pig's ear and the cheese. So great game, and he keeps coming back with the ball 100 times. Then you throw it. Each time it's a new surprise for him. He's going, "Oh, ball!" Gets the ball. He goes, "Well, what's that smell or taste?" And he finds out it's cheese on the ball. So he licks the ball for a minute or two, brings it back, and rinse and repeat. Excellent, you know. So that's a great, simple game for all you animal lovers. I call it a cheese ball, right? So didn't take much imagination for that one. My other invention, I reckon, I haven't seen anyone. Get down, get off me. No regard for space, disregard for personal space that he has, so get down. I'm telling you now, if you were anyone else doing that, I'd be pissed off. Anyway, yeah, I reckon this is my own, what do you call it? But we all been to the beach. If you have children, there for a while, they get sort of bored quickly. pot rocks, excellent. You know, I guess you have to find a beach with some rocks, but usually there's rocks up towards the land aspect of the beach. And so you just go around, you dig a hole, right? You dig a hole, 1, 2, whatever, maybe bucket size, and you take 20 steps back. You decide yourself, each person, man, woman, boy, girl, collects 10 rocks of their own size and they're happy with, and you know, everyone tosses it in. First to get the highest score wins, you know, brilliant. Pass away loads of hours doing that. You never get sick of it. Because I think, I don't know, somewhere in our nature, it's like the dog, why he chases the ball. Somewhere in his nature, he's meant to be chasing something. Somewhere in our nature, we're meant to be calculating, right? So I think we all take pride. In sort of having a true aim, right? So look at him. Look, he's my best friend. You think I can't see through it. He thinks I am a dodo. Everyone knows I am a dodo, but he really thinks I am a dodo. So I'll sort him out with a few cheese ball throws in a few minutes. But yeah, let me get, as I usually do, the songs out of the way. Very important day, 9/11, and whether you know it or not, talk about belief and knowing. But yeah, all I'm doing is coming from my own point of view, and these are when I express these opinions. This is where I'm coming from. I sort of settled on them because I've been through my own pathway. I'm not going to be able to provide you with everything that I have come to learn about all of this through research or just putting pieces together or whatever. I won't be able to do that. So you can take what I have to say with a pinch of salt. I'll try to be honest and true in all the things I do and say. And especially now because I realize the sort of the nature, the gravitas of the situation, if you will. So yeah, I named the Hangout 9/11 Motion Picture Soundtrack. Anyone who's listened to me before has heard me talking about this sort of stuff. But I will do a bit of talking about 9/11 to begin with, and maybe a couple of other things thrown in. So I have nothing planned. I could talk about so much, and generally I sort of skip over a whole hell of a lot of things and probably get nothing of too in-depth in nature talked about. So maybe you know, this is where you try to juggle everything, and also then you sort of leave the chat behind. So, and then if you do get involved in the chat, you get sort of taken away in another tangent. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like a bit of a juggling act. But look, we'll take it as it comes. That's why it's probably easier for me not to plan anything. The first song, which is the title of the Hangout, is called Motion Picture Soundtrack. The day being in it, what you watched on 9/11 was a 102-minute movie broadcast as live, but it wasn't live. It was all stitched together. It was a pre-prepared movie. And what you watched was song number 10 from the album soundtrack. Now, you've heard about Pink Floyd and their Dark Side of the Moon album syncing up perfectly with Alice in Wonderland. Not Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz, which is fine enough. Like, people act as if it's a massive surprise. But when we know Pink Floyd is, or when we, you know, entertain the idea that Pink Floyd is an established or a manufactured band, right, clue givers, if you will, it doesn't even take too much imagination to be able to see that that's a possibility, if not a truth, you know, because the movie itself came out, late 40s, I think, maybe something like that. And the book was, you know, 40 years previous to, by someone called Bam, B-A, and the name was significant as well. I looked into this ages ago, but let me just move beyond that. So yeah, nothing too surprising. It's just a band sat down, watched the movie, and wrote out the movie score for it, you know, sort of reverse engineered it. So it's along the same lines that Radiohead's album Kid A was designed, but the wondrous thing about that is, well, the album Kid A was released in the year 2000, and of course 9/11, that movie, which was a 102-minute movie, as I said, broadcast to us as live, what went on in reality, a magic trick, right? A magic trick. For most part of New York, you can't see especially in the city areas, you can't see the Twin Towers, in a very sort of secluded place in one sense. You can see it across the river, etc. Well, if you set up a lot of cloud and fog sort of machines to haze out the area, then people, as is in nature, you know, will revert to the television. And over time, then, even if they were there, you know, outside of the, Randy, come on, go out, please. Outside of the strong-willed, you know, who maintain and stick to their story. And I've heard a few of those stories, especially on the likes of letsrollforums.com and cluesforums.info, where people have given their personal experiences of the day. And it's all very different from what we saw on television. And apparently, stop it! I'll knock you out. I'll lock him out. I'll lock you out. Right. Yeah, so they stick to their story, but for the vast majority, over time, their minds will be blended and melded in with what they saw on television, and then all the resistance from others. What do you mean this happened? This is what we saw on television. So it's this sort of thing. They can cater with a few sort of what do you call it? What's the proper term for it? Loose cannons, if you will. People who saw something different on the day and stuck to it and reported it. But yeah, what we saw in general was a magic trick on the day. The buildings were all emptied. It was a safe demolition. What was presented to us, it was a pre-prepared movie on screen. Two buildings came down in 9 and 11 seconds. But they were emptied, and you have a safe demolition. As with all demolitions, is a complete evacuation of all materials within the building, because if there isn't, right, well, then there is the possibility of a wayward collapse, right, and that would be catastrophic for residential areas. And look, they can't hurt or take your free will away willy-nilly. This is why 9/11 as a media hoax makes more and more sense for anyone who considers it for the first time. But yeah, let me get back to the song, and I can go back on to the rest of the stuff afterwards. But yeah, so to think that to think that Pink Floyd and The Wizard of Oz with The Dark Side of the Moon is a soundtrack, or they could have been written afterwards looking at the movie, that's not much of a leap. But with Kid A, right, the album came out in 2000, and the movie, the 9/11, let's just say, happened 1 year later. So that would be amazing, sort of, if you will, divine foresight, that everything linked up so well, and that, if we accept that it was the soundtrack to the movie, or it's just beyond sort of all levels of possibility that it wasn't written specifically for it, well, then we can understand and put the pieces together. And even though it might be hard to believe, we were dealing with a pre-prepared movie. I think we're given clues in the moon landing that, we're told that once you get on the conspiracy pathway, that they would have had the movie prepared beforehand, because for the sake of the live audiences earthwide, if something catastrophic was to happen, you couldn't put people through the shock and trauma of witnessing the imminent, or literally the deaths of these brave men and women who ventured where no man had ventured before, right? Star Trek, ARISTARCHUS, all encoded. But yeah, so back to this song. So this Kid A has 10 songs in it, and this is song number 10. And I can put links in the chat as well for anyone interested. If you want the links to where that's gone through, how it's the soundtrack to 9/11. And this is coming from people who didn't know about conspiracy, first of all, didn't know about Flat Earth or Radiohead's connection to all of this. So it's coming from a completely separate source. So the fact that I can tie it all in like this, is not coming out of my own sort of construction or out of my own imagination. It's tying different pieces together that were put in place for us to, I guess, unlock. Anyway, song number 10, you'll never guess what it was called. I couldn't believe it, because for years it was my favorite song without knowing why, without knowing any of this. It's called Motion Picture Soundtrack. And that's what I opened up with at the start. I remember the lyrics, so I don't have to read them. But I'll tell you to pay, you might listen to it again. Not go on and listen to Radiohead's version. Obviously, it's much better, different version anyway. And they omitted the third verse in the album, so very significant in itself. So let me go through the lyrics. Again, Motion Picture Soundtrack. It's telling you all there, isn't it? How amazing is that? Song number 10 as well. X, the I, the 1 and the 0. So that's all significant. The 1 and the 0 is theta, right? And the theta is it's the symbol for God, I guess. It's the 0. It's the 1. This is the material, which is all the countable. So, and it's the 0, which is the immaterial or the uncountable. So the God, I use the term lightly, God, right? All words are encoded, right? And when I say the word God, though, now, it doesn't bring up any image to my brain anymore, and I use it lightly. I prefer using the term the Creator, right? But again, I use that loosely as well because we can't sort of grasp on what's going on. We, for instance, might be imagine you were the creator yourself, and speaking of something outside of yourself would be an error. So we use all I use all terms like that lightly. And it's blasphemous, isn't it? Suggesting that there might be an aspect of the creator within us. And if there's an aspect of, then we're all of, right? So, yeah, that's blasphemous, isn't it? No, you must give your power to someone elsewhere who you know nothing about. Just take it from me. Well, we can't do that at this stage. But anyway, they left out the third verse in the soundtrack itself, in the version on the album itself. And I only found out years later that there was a third verse. So let me go through the lyrics. Motion picture soundtrack. White wine and sleeping pills help me get back to your arms. Cheap sex and sad films help me get where I belong. Hang on, is that the other way around? Is it white wine and sleeping pills help me get where I belong? Sad films and sad cheap sex. Yeah, let me do that again. Sorry, I'm just so used to singing it, right? White wine and sleeping pills help me get back to your arms. Cheap sex and sad films help me to get where I belong. I think you're crazy, maybe. I think you're crazy, maybe. Stop sending letters. Letters always get burned. It's not like the movies. They fed us on little white lies. I think you're crazy, maybe. I think you're crazy, maybe. And this is the third verse then, which was the omitted one. Beautiful angels torn apart at birth. Limbless and lifeless, I hardly recognize you. I think you're crazy, maybe. I think you're crazy, maybe. And then the last bit, I will see you in the next life. Very, very pertinent as well. And remember, this is the very last song of the sound. For me, I'm absolutely happily settled on that. Of the greatest event or non-event, if you will, or symbolic event of our times, which is 9/11, changing of the guard. And here we are today, 17 years later. It's unbelievable, 17 years later. And lots of personal anecdotes regarding the significance of 9/11 in my life, up to and including a role it plays in terms of my son and his own being here on this earth. But yeah, that's song number 10. That's motion picture soundtrack. And yeah, that was from the album Kid A, which is the 102-minute movie that we saw on 9/11, broadcasted live soundtrack. Amazing stuff in itself. Takes a bit to get your mind wrapped around that, the whole possibility of all of that. And just to throw in, not a by the way, but a little factoid that we're told is the case anyway, whether it is or not. Thom Yorke is the lead singer. Thom Yorke. There we have New York in the title itself, but Thom is another name for the sun. Thom. Thomas. So there's the sun. The sun plays a prominent role in 9/11, if anyone hasn't realized. And Flat Earth is also right up there. It's all connected, all interconnected. So that is, little factoid. We're told that, Thom Yorke, first of all, Thom, I already mentioned about Behemoth, has Thom in it, right? Thom Yorke, we're told as a youngster, had the nickname of, well, first of all, Radiohead, one of the best bands on earth, like, in terms of the diversity and the quality of music that they put out. They're another control band. If you're interested, look up Radiohead in 9/11, see where they were. They were broadcasting live from a concert in Germany, and they do an interview. This is all choreographed, right? Again, a game of clues for us. And if you're not down this pathway, or if you haven't ventured down this pathway, you're going to think everything I say is crazy, and that's fine. I'm gone sort of beyond that at this stage. But I can, I can follow the trail, and I can point anyone out. Not that I'm inclined to do that, but here in my own chat, I will certainly provide links to anyone who requires them. I can look them up and post them to you. But Radiohead, one of the biggest bands and best bands on earth. Radiohead itself, a very encoded name. Radio, it's all about frequency, right? It's all about frequency and vibration. Once we realize the setting that we're under, once we can raise our own frequency or recognize the external frequency, then we can sort of change our interrelationship with everything. And Radiohead as well. Yeah, head, he, A-D. Adam, AD, right? So A points upwards. So we're looking for the higher leanings that, as opposed to the lower leanings, which is what the L represents in one of its interpretations, right? It's the lower aspect. Look at the foot, where how the foot meets the ground at an L, right? So it's talking again. We are the theta, the 0 and the 1, the material and the immaterial. So we can take it that the lower aspect, we have a material side, a lower aspect to that material side, and a higher aspect, the vices and the virtues, right? You want to put it like that. And then we have the immaterial side, and then we have the lower aspects, the tendencies towards, in inverted commas, use the words likely as well, demonic sort of style, thinking or behavior. And like Tom York says in the third omitted verse of Motion Picture Soundtrack, beautiful angel is the angelic side. So that's the theta, and this is what it represents for me anyway, the TH. And yeah, the A, an upper leaning, L, a lower leaning. So once we can understand, yeah, it's as easy as ABC, right? 1, 2, 3. Once we can understand somewhat, we get a grasp somewhat, and the pictures that the numbers and the letters are painting in terms of this division. So we look at the H, it's symmetrical on all sides, and that's what it means to be human, and towards the heart center. And there's another thing that I think we have to realize: when you see something in 2 dimensions, you have to 3-dimensionalize it. So we do the same with the letter H, for instance. If in our own brain we can picture a 3-dimensional H, everything going towards a very central point. This is the heart of the immaterial. We're not the bodies. So yeah, all numbers and letters are in relation to the H or the 8. Right, so this is where the 8 comes in. H is the 8th letter in whatever code you decide to use, except a few. Marty Leeds has everything pivoting on the 7, which I think is wrong. Everything pivots on the 9, with I and J being equivalent. So that led me to come up with the code dodo. And for me, the more I look, the more I see code dodo, or the more I sort of not have it in action and not too busy delving into it, but the more words I examine, come across, I see how pertinent code dodo is, and it's very, very simple. Again, everything just pivots around the I and the J. So as you go all the way up, A to H has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then the I is 9, J is 9, and then you come back down. K is 8, L is 7. You know, everything is inverted, so we can see how an L might be a 7. M is 6, N is 5, etc. All the way to R. S is 2, or Q is 2, R is 1, then back up, and then we end on Z is 9 as well. ZZ9 plural alpha is one of these fantastical planets, I think, from our sector. Was it a sector of the galaxy in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is very encoded as well. Douglas Noel Adams. That's the dog. I was the dog now. I didn't fart. You're disgusting, Brandy. You won't even excuse himself. That was a fake cough anyway. He's just sort of getting my attention away. He knows I'm talking to something now, but he doesn't know what's going on. But all he's thinking is like cheese, you know, and can't blame him as well. Anyway, yeah, Douglas Noel Adams, DNA, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy told us the answer was 42, but ZZ9 plural alpha, I think, was the sector we were said to be living in the galaxy before Earth was destroyed to make way for a hyperspace bypass. Very encoded. These people are characters. That's another fake death, Douglas Adams. And you know, who's to say that all these characters, all these fake deaths, they don't play their part then in further TV hoaxes, or they take on the character of a different persona. This is very easy for me to believe, and it's probably the best way of doing it, right? Who would expect? So you know, even if some people recognize a similarity between characters, you'd go, well, it couldn't be him because the other guy is dead, but he wouldn't be really. It would be him. And we just sort of talk ourselves out of it, talk ourselves out of the things that we know intuitively, you know. And yeah, that was just by what do you call it? Yeah, Tom York. Sorry, to get back to Tom York, his nickname as a youngster, we're told, is Dodo. Right? Crazy. It's crazy. It's not arbitrary. It's not just one of those things. He's far from a dodo. First of all, once you understand that he's part of this manufactured sort of clue-giving band of actors, I guess. Well, then you can sort of appreciate that all the facts or factoids sent our way have significance, and they're there for a very good reason. Sorry, that was just going on from Radiohead and the significance of the name itself. His other name, we're told, was, and I have that there, 42, the name of the article is 42 Things You Didn't Know About Thom Yorke. It had to be 42, right? Douglas Adams, as I said, Radiohead, Adam and Eve. Adam is just a higher aspect, so we've been divided into two: Adam, the higher aspect, and the Eve, the lower aspect, the material, right? So it's not sort of being judgmental, it's just saying that there's two aspects to us: is the immaterial, the ethereal, if you will, and the material. And yeah, it's, you know, that's all it is. This is the whole story about you. We'll notice that when we come to flat earth, the Bible was waiting at the door of flat earth for us. Well, this is to suck you in further. This is letting the cat out of the bag, because they have such great people put in place with great arguments. I can name a few, but I won't. Well, I will. Quantum erasure is one. It's all about science, but when it comes to the Bible, I'm always a believer. Oh no, this is true. This is the word. There's no evidence, you know. Flat out elected is another one. MG Pillbox, another great speaker. So yeah, they'll give you flat earth, but then so one cat is let out of one bag, but it's only into a bigger bag is where you're being led. So then you'll gravitate towards the Bible and its literal sort of interpretation. And then you're getting into things that you have no connection with again, once you take these things literally, right? Again, it's all about you and your story. Adam and Eve is you, right? It's within you. There's nothing outside of you. So it's telling you about the different aspects to you. And again, the letters point you in the right direction. A points upwards, Eve, the V, points downwards. There we have the two E's as well. E is divided, whole E, spirit, right? So we bring the two E's together, two aspects, the material and the immaterial, and we spirit down the center, because we are material, immaterial. This is where the spine comes into it. And I think that's the Holy Grail, right? It's the Holy G-rail, whole E, G-rail, right? It's a railing, and it connects us. It holds our superstructure together. And it also has an integral part in terms of spinal fluids and whatever they may contain. So our bodies are sort of amazing things. And the mystery, I think the greatest mystery outside of the external mystery, this is what I keep saying about flat earth. If you get stuck on flat earth, you know, what can I say? You're not progressing. It was handed to us on a plate. That's sort of somewhat, some things about the external world that you come to terms with. That leaves a whole big gaping hole in terms of the internal world then. And I think this is where, well, you are the experiencer, right? So the experience without the experiencer is nothing. And this is where non-literal interpretation of the Bible and the words written and many other works. I talked about Alice in Wonderland being book for book, the most important book you'll ever read. You know, I have done that, and I still hold to that. The Bible is 66 books. You know, not just one book. Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through Looking Glass is 2 books. So any flat earther, I mean, 3 years, well, I've been a flat earther for 5 years, so about 2013, I guess. I could put a date on it. I considered it beforehand, looked into it beforehand, and sort of settled on it then. And yeah, I noticed people coming in at many different stages. But for me, if you're at it for an extended period of time and you're just stuck on the basics, like the ground, well, the ground seems level, water doesn't bend, and, you know, doesn't seem to be any movement of the earth beneath us. Well, that's fine, you know, that's fine. But, you know, how much time are you going to spend on that before maybe putting a little bit of thought and effort into maybe other things that you can figure out? And again, most especially regarding ourselves, you know, and who we are and how we really work, how we really tick. He's giving up. He's giving up. He'll get a nice surprise in a minute. I hope you can see that now. No, head up now. He's giving up. But yeah, give me 1 sec, Brand. I'll just go over the music and we'll sort you out down with a bit of cheese ball. So let me just make sure that's coming through okay. Well, I'm sure it is. Yeah, that looks like it's coming through. Yeah, that's enough about Thom Yorke. But oh yeah, sorry, just to finish. Yeah, we're told his nickname as a youngster was the Dodo, right? Very strange. Michael Jackson, who, if you don't know, his death was faked, and if you don't know anything about the sort of the fabricated man that was Michael Jackson, that's not my problem. But his death was clearly faked. But back in 2012, I didn't know any of this. This character, Five Alive Dodo, a mysterious sort of cartoon character, came up. Not cartoon as such, but you know, look into it. Again, I can post links. Five Alive Dodo came on the scene. Lots of rumors were being spread around. This was Michael Jackson, giving lots of clues because it was pretty obvious that someone was pointing at least towards Michael Jackson. But for the vast majority, Michael Jackson is dead, so it couldn't be that. There's something else going on. But yeah, the character's name itself, the Five Alive Dodo. And again, all fingers point to Michael Jackson. I have given that a context for the first time, and I accept that it is the case. So this is why I think all of these people are clue givers. They're acting their part within the theater. And well, the clues are there waiting for you to sort of piece together and get some sort of coherency about everything. That's the first. So yeah, we're also told that, and I think this is most significant as well. Remember, I mentioned Thom is the name for the sun, and salamander. We're also told that Thom Yorke's other nickname was as a youngster. Well, we know about a salamander. The primary feature characteristic of a salamander we can all associate with the creature is when it loses a limb, it can regenerate it, right? So in terms of need, it will forego a limb, be it a part of its tail or a leg or whatever, and as I said, the vital parts, and over time then it will regrow. So what are we being told here? Well, when we understand that Jesus is the Son, but the Son is something else, I say the Son is ARISTARCHUS, right? But ARISTARCHUS is a perfect anagram of Christ's aura. Well, what if Jesus is the Son? What do we mean by the second coming? Well, if the Son has been rebuilt or regenerated somehow, and this is what I think is happening. And I've pointed out for the longest of times that I think the Son has increased in frequency. We can all experience that in terms of the increased intensity of the heat from the sun, although heat doesn't come from the sun, it's energy that comes from the sun. The heat is generated via that energy interacting with the water particulation everywhere in the atmosphere, and if you want to call it atmosphere. And this is what we experience, and is light, visible light and heat, but it's fundamentally coming from an energy generating source, which is, as I say again, ARISTARCHUS. ARISTARCHUS being Christ's aura, or in the Hangout description, I put it in as well because it's very significant. See Arthur as is. And just to tie it back in with Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the main character was called Arthur Dent, right? Arthur Dent, King Arthur. You are Thor, frequency Thor with his frequency hammer. So all of these things connect. Thor is another representation of Christ with the Knights of the Round table. And let me just recommend Rosette Delacroix for some of her work, excellent work. I think she has it wrong in the sense that she goes back to the literal interpretation of all of this as well, but she's very good at, first of all, bringing certain facts to the table, facts of comments to the table, and then decoding them with a flat earth backdrop and a mind to understanding that all words are encoded, right? So, yeah. That's Thom, the Son. So the second coming, right? A rebuilding, if you will, of the tree, or a regeneration of the previous system that was here, whatever the cause or the source of the Son is. And as I said, well, I say it's ARISTARCHUS. The best way to understand ARISTARCHUS is the decapitated tree of life, broadcasting or emanating from the North Center. And if that was being regenerated somewhat, then it would tie into Thom Yorke and his secondary nickname as a youngster, Salamander. I mean, what child has a nickname fucking Dodo or Salamander? You wouldn't call your friend Dodo, right? Even though some people call me, bullies like blocked up, just call me sleepy shit. That's a pretty bad name to call somebody as a youngster, right? Because I was sort of, a bit bored by things and sort of in a world of my own. So I guess people could call anyone anything, but they weren't friends, and my friends would never call me that sort of stuff. My nickname as a child was a few things. Let me think. Shay, Pete Shay. I was always Shay, right, for the longest of times. That's based on the surname, the family name, better said. What else? Shilton. I used to be a goalkeeper. Well, played in goals for soccer.
and very good at goal. Well, I would say very good, but good enough in goals. And he was called me Peter Shilton because the first name is Peter, PS initials. And Peter Shilton was a famous, I think he was an English goalkeeper. He also played for Arsenal, I think, for years. And also called Cheyenne, right? And this, I was thinking about this not relatively recently. It comes into my head every now and again, because I had this sort of strange reputation as a youngster amongst my friends, right, for being able to, I know it sounds strange, conjure the rain, right, or sort of put the rain aside somewhat. So it just happened on many different occasions that when I sort of focused on it, let's say we were out playing football or something and we were all pissed off that the rain came, I would do something or just focus on it, and by pure chance, maybe the rain would stop. So after this happening a good few times, people started calling me Cheyenne, after the Indian Cheyenne tribe and the rain dance and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, none of my friends would call me stupid things like dodo for one, or salamander. So yeah, again, encoded all clues for us. And I think that's where salamander is particularly apt, right? With the regrowth of something that's lost, a limb that's lost. Okay, let me leave that behind. And Jesus Christ, it's 10 to 9 already. Okay, nothing done. Move to the second song, Ocean Color Scene, lovely song from Mosley Shoals. And these people are another band put in place, and throughout their music, get lots of different clues as well. Ultimately, everything is about flat Earth. Not particularly this song, but flat Earth, and then beyond that, right? So who we maybe are having this experience. And let me just read the lyrics. Lay down your head and look to your window. Where do you go when it's not where you're going? And how do you see when the light isn't shining? Where you could be if you worked out the timing? And how does it feel when the world comes on so real and true? And how do you do the things you do to you? If I were a king and you were a lady, what would I sing? To say what I'm saying? Would you believe the verses left open, the heart in my sleeve, the rhyming all broken? And how does it feel when the world comes on so real and true? And how do you do the things you do to you? Sell me a river and I'll skate away to the downstream where I did play, so easy-minded, like a hill on the skyline, tripped up and blinded, getting lost on the sidelines. And how does it feel when the world comes on so real and true? And how do you do the things you do to you? How do you do the things you do to you? Yeah, just a very nice song. And yeah, I guess I've often spoken about that. If we knew if the world comes on so real and true, what we do to our children, I guess there'd be lampposts full of hanging bodies, because it's so desperate what we do, consciously and willingly for the most part, unwittingly, but willingly, you know. And I guess it all comes down to who we view ourselves as being, what we are, you know. And if we only knew, this is the last line, what it's all about. How do, you wouldn't do the things you do to you, and hence then you wouldn't do them to others as well. So yeah, how does it feel when the world comes on so real and true? We're certainly getting thrown into deep end as regards that, right? I think we're definitely moving towards truth, but in terms of the bigger picture, how far or how near are we towards it? How far away from, or how near are we towards the ultimate truth? Well, that's up to you to answer that question, right? And how you feel about it. Last song, My Heart and Lute, excellent, by Thomas More. Thomas More, I've talked about this before. It has behemoth encoded within it. Thomas More, another fabricated character from history, decapitated, we're told, by Henry VIII, H8. H is the 8th letter, so there we have 8-8. And that 8-8 is in reference to 8-8-8, right, which is the 3 8s. 3 8s are 24, which is 42 backwards, and 3 is the magic number. 3 24s are 72 then, right? And 3 72s are 216, 72 names for God. And it says 216 is a very significant number as well. I can't quite get a grasp on, because I knew the significance of it once, just the ultimate significance of it, and I've forgotten it, but I'm sure that will come back to me again. But it's a very significant number as well. 3 is the magic number, and as I say, everything comes back to the H or the 8 in terms of numbers and letters. And the 8, if we think about it, is the twisted 0. So you get a 0, you twist it in half. You put 2 8s side by side, and there you have dodo. And ultimately, this is what the dodo represents as well, as a sort of a state of division. You've taken the immaterial and divided it so it becomes the material and the immaterial, ultimately to untwist it. So this is why everything revolves around the 8, if you will, because we are having this human experience, and everything we're sort of talking about and considering is all part of this human experience. And one day we leave it behind. I think we leave everything behind, including time, right? We have no idea what time is. Time is a construct, and it's a mental sort of reckoning. It all goes back to the sun as well. Time is all based on the sun. And when we understand that the sun is far from being beautiful, which it is, like, this is our only idea of what's natural, right? But because we live in a broken system, yeah, we realize that the sun is an artifact of this destruction. So yeah, we leave all that behind someday, but everything that we learn within applies to the human condition, which is both the material and the immaterial. I guess we leave the material, ultimately, it's not that we leave the material behind. We never were the material. We're just having sort of an experience, a venture into this 3D land. But yeah, Thomas More, author of My Heart in Newt, and we're referenced to My Heart in Newt from Alice Through Looking Glass. So when Alice encounters the White Knight, who moves in the form of an L, right, and very clumsy as well, very clumsy, he's always falling off his horse. This is very pertinent, right? And the L is the seventh, L is seven letter is the G as well. So I've talked about when you look at Aristarchus, right, in the heart of Aristarchus, there you can see the 8, but you can also see so many other things, including the G, the Masonic G. So these are aspects of a broken system. And once we can sort of wrap our brains around this, we can get for me speaking personally, anyway, you can get a better sort of general grasp on what might be going on. My Heart in Newt, yeah. So the night Alice's conversation with him, she reminds us in the book that it was the most memorable of all her experiences. So we're pointed to as a special significance to that. And yeah, that's just after, or is it just before Alice receives her crown by solving the riddle? Well, we solved the riddle ourselves. We were through all of this. The solution to the riddle, we're left with a riddle by the White Queen to Alice. And the solution turns out to be oyster, right? And within an oyster, we have a pearl. An oyster, phonically, I-star, right? And you know, Aristarchus, I-star is in the heart of Aristarchus. Aristarchus, C-H-U-S, is a diminutive, or sort of a shortened version of the name Jesus, would you believe, in Spanish, right? It also represents the cross as well. So, yeah, that turns out to be the solution to the White Queen's riddle to Alice before she receives her crown. And just before that, she has an encounter with the White Knight. White Knight references us to this poem then, or it's a sort of, you know, reference within the chapter itself, which is My Heart in Newt by Thomas More. And as I say, Thomas More was beheaded. Thom is the name for the sun. This is what we remember at Christmas time. We get I call it a decapitated tree because there's so much going on underneath the ground as well with the trees, you know, and God knows how deep and how far an extent the root system goes. So a decapitated tree, this is what we do at Christmas time or Xmas time, right? We take that decapitated tree and place it on a big X, marks the spot, and we artificially light it up, right? So this is what we're remembering. So Thomas More being decapitated, or the sun is decapitated, right? Thom being the name for the sun. So this is what it's telling me anyway. And My Heart in Newt. So we know heart is an anagram of earth. Right, so my earth, and lute. Lute is a musical instrument of times of old. Lute backwards is ital. Ital, and si tu parles français, si vous parlez le français, you will understand what ital means. It means star. So my earth and star. So it's in the singular as well. So I find it very interesting because for me now, everything is reversed. So instead of an infinite number of luminaries, we have one. We have one and one alone. And we're seeing it in all its reflected glory. A kaleidoscopic sort of effect, you know, and you have everything then moving around in a sort of a disharmonious whole, if you will. But what we need to bear in mind is the contour of the reflecting surface. So when we sort of again, it's all about the individual painting their own picture. But when we take all of these things into account, then we can sort of get a better grasp on the luminaries. Just to go through it from my perspective anyway. The North Center, we have this decapitated tree of life, Aristarchus, emanating. It hits the barrier, haven't quite settled on this two-barrier system. We have the northern barrier, and we're on the outer barrier, which begins low, rises highest at the equatorial area. So the equator applies to the contour of the barrier, the maximum distance that this reflective barrier is above perpendicularly the ground, which for me is only in the region of 60 miles, something like that, the Kármán line. So then it back low down as well at the southern peripherals. And this is where the Orlando Ferguson map, this is what it encodes. Mark Sargent gave us that clue. Yeah, so when we take that into account, the contour of the reflective surface, which is, it's like for me, again, you know, just where I'm at, it's an electromagnetic field that is holding back the waters beyond, and it is water, and water has this reflective nature. So when you introduce energies to it, reflective energies, you're going to get reflected artifacts. I think we can all relate to this as well. So we have Aristarchus emanating from the center. Its direct reflection is Polaris, right? Polaristarchus, and then Polaristarchus. People say that Polaris doesn't move. It's as constant as an ordinary star, but it does move. It moves in a circle, a small circle. When we look at the sun, which is the direct reflection of Polaris, right? We're just seeing it moving in the same circle, but it's just sort of an extended basis, right? It's on a projected basis, if you will. So when we look at the moon, then the moon is a reflection of the sun, a direct reflection of the sun, and then you just have this constant sort of reflection, reflections moving in tandem. Everything outside of that then has, well, obviously from our point of view, there's the two luminaries, the sun and the moon, and everything else then compared to that are pretty minimal in terms of size. So yeah, that's my heart. So that's why, yeah, my heart and lute, my earth and star, not my earth and stars. So as I said, everything is reversed. So instead of the infinite number of luminaries, we have one luminary fractally, kaleidoscopically reflecting. That's where I'm at. And the moon proves that to me as well. Every crater we look at, when we look at the moon, is one crater and one crater alone, and all its reflected, refracted, perspective, magnified artifacts. So that's where I'm at, and as I said, ultimately everything comes back to Aristarchus. But yeah, my heart and lute, my earth and star, and even though I've decoded some of this, I haven't quite gotten to the bottom of it because I know it's very encoded. But the music is my own. The poem is from Thomas More, we're told, and I encourage everyone to look into that as well. So let me get this out of the way. I give thee all, I can no more, though poor the offering be. My heart and lute are all the store that I can give to thee, a lute whose gentle song reveals the soul of love full well, and better for a heart that feels much more than lute can tell. Though love and song may fail alas to keep life's clouds away, at least 'twill make them lighter pass or gild them if they stay. And even if care at moments flings a discord o'er life's happy strain, let love but gently touch the strings, 'twill all be sweet again. So yeah, excellent encoded lyrics there, 16 lines, again with the 8, everything's about the 8. He heard the cheese opening now, you see. So yeah, big long story leading up to that, but I do recommend to everybody, if you're a flat earther, reread Alice in Wonderland again. You can listen to it in an audiobook and understand that at the very first chapter, they tell you pretty much how ridiculous an idea it is that we live on a spinning ball, right? When Alice is falling to the rabbit hole and she's considering this thing, what she's been told in school about, oh yeah, you smell it now? Yeah. Still has half an eye now on the, what do you call it? The pig's ear. So I'm thinking, never tried this before, a little bit of cheese on the pig's ear. Oh, that'd be fucking 7th heaven for him, right, Brand? Good boy. That's off. So yeah, that's my heart and lute, and I think I'll leave it there for a minute anyway and get back to talking about 9/11. As I said, I'll probably stay on yeah, another hour or so, and I sort of think I've worked out a way as well to be able to share full screen without sharing the link. So I can just catch the tab and move it to like half in screen, half out screen, then share full screen. And even if the link is shared, it's only half the link. So you can have as many guesses as you like to fill in the blanks to try and porn bomb me again. The other channel is coming back quite soon. I think that's the dog now again. That's not me. So my main channel, after 3 months unfair sort of banning from live streams, so God knows how many other live streams I have in me. So let me go into chat. I'm sorry about that. If anyone's waiting to ask questions, I know I can get through a lot. I'll just make sure I come through okay. Yeah, high definition there. You can do a tranny investigation all you like there. That sounds good. Let me just probably come through a bit too clear on my blemishes. Get down off that. Get off of it. Get off. Get down. Shit. Where's the ball? Give me that ball. How can you have a cheese ball without a ball, man? Come on. All right, let me just put that down. Okay, I can pop out the chat anyway, so I can keep an eye on it. And yeah, welcome to everybody. Cheers for listening in. Just a general chat. I'm going to put on the kettle in a second now. And how can I put? How about the chat? Here we go. Anyone who wants a... Hang on. Anyone who wants a link there, let me know. Sandra, let me give you a wrench there. I mean, look, let's not use any... You just end up giving everyone a wrench, and then people you don't give a wrench, you'll start offending. But I never used wrenches in my life. Not really, anyway. I never liked them. So keep them to a minimum. But look, if you feel you must ban, there's lots of shitheads around. I just have loads of people just blocked in terms of the YouTube 3 dots block. So yeah, I look better when the screen is blurred. Actually, when I go down to lower definition, but you're not to worry. That's only the physical, right? Lady, how you doing, Lady? Onyx, thank you for the picture there of your dodo skeleton from. I think it was the Oxford Natural History Museum, which, funny enough, I talked about Tom York and the 42 things you didn't know about Tom York. This is where he was interviewed, apparently, up at the in the Oxford Natural History Museum. And I think that's probably the only place they have the full skeleton of the dodo. So that Tom, being the dodo, going there and doing that interview with his own son, yeah, I think it's very encoded, right? But yeah, thank you for that image. And yeah, they're constantly changing their story, right? There is no picture. No one is any. We're told via the story. No one has any first-hand experience in terms of seeing the dodo and throwing. Give me the ball. Where's the ball? Get away. Where's the ball? Give me that ball. Yeah, give it to me. Bring it to me. Give me that ball. He's not good at bringing back the ball. He's good at chasing it, all right, but he sort of mind wanders then. But yeah, that's the only place they have the full skeleton, and they've pieced it together from different collectors throughout the world, we're told, and finally put a full picture together. And it looks ridiculous to me. And why not? Because, well, of course, the bird, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely didn't exist. Anyone who thinks the bird existed, well, just hasn't looked into it deeply enough. And in layered within the narrative then are the clues for us to sort of tell the story, to eke out the story, follow the clues, and see how everything sort of ties together. So that's certainly what I've been doing. Right or wrong, I can't be wrong in one sense, because I haven't the imagination to sort of piece all these things together. And, in one sense, this is all very childlike. So we have to sort of simplify things. And if we do, then, we can sort of make progress. I've often said it that there's nothing new under the sun. So we can't, and that's in general as well. Anything that we do come up with in terms of originality, it's always based on something that's already out there. So when it comes to this greater story of everything, I think it's more pertinent to be able to read somewhat the story and then sort of, piece it together yourself, maybe add pieces from here, there, and everywhere. This sort of separates you and your individual experience from others. So, everything seems like it's coming through all right. He's not getting another cheese ball now until he brings back the fucking ball. right, give me it. I'll have to go out and get it now. And the minute, see, the thing what happens, I go out and get it, right? And then he bites it and he won't give it to me. And then I have to go out and bite his ear. Then he starts crying because I'm biting his ear. He lets go of the ball, but luckily he forgets about it. But very shortly after that, and we sort of start the whole rigmarole again. But I think it's maybe he's coming up on 3 now. It's a bit late. Look, he comes back in without the ball again. But I think it's a bit late to sort of teach this dog new tricks. And you would imagine it's pretty easy to teach the dog. Why can't you bring in the ball? You know, communication. This barrier sometimes is hard to sort of bridge, you know, and no matter how much I tried to, yeah, he just won't bring back the ball. Let me put on the kettle anyway. I'll get the ball. Yeah, I'll fucking get it. I'll get it. Don't worry about me. Yeah, don't worry about the hangout here and all the people who are waiting. Don't worry about that. I'll get the ball. It's just there. You think he'd be only dying to bring it back because the last experience was so great that I'll bring it back. Look, get down. I'll bring it back and maybe the same thing will happen again. No, it doesn't occur to him. He wants me to fucking do everything. So I don't know, should I be mad at him or something? I don't know. But here he's back again, so we give it a try. Another cheese ball. For the cheese. If you break a string, I'll break your neck. Cheese ball. There you go. Look, all excited, anxious now. And all he used to do is bring back the ball. Then it'd be like the gift that never stops giving, because I would just like a fool relayer it, keep trying it. So he's getting the cheese, he's getting the ball, he's getting everything, but he just won't bring back the ball. I think he knows what he's doing as well. He's just doing it to spite me and piss me off. Right, there you go. See, he completely forgotten about the pig's ear now, but if I wave the pig's ear up, then the ball is out the window. Right. Ready? Go on, enjoy. Good boy, where's the ball? Get the ball. Don't just lift the ball out there. Bring it back in. Where's the ball, Brand? Cheese ball. Cheese ball. Where's the cheese ball, Brand? All right, just making a cup of coffee there. No intoxicants for me tonight, unfortunately. Although I don't have money, like, but I forgo drink. I don't care for drink anymore. I don't care for drink too much. But a bit of a smoke would be nice now. Get down, get down. There you go, there you go. Okay. Yeah, okay, so yeah, I'll leave the songs behind, but getting back to the 9/11, no fucker is talking about 9/11. No one. Nobody. All you have on the television, more of the bullshit, the same documentaries they were putting out years ago, The Falling Man. They don't venture near 9/11 conspiracies, except I guess if you go to RT Today, some of these sort of minor channels, if you will, inverted commas, then you can venture down that pathway, but not one alteration in terms of what the mainstream is putting out. So you can't rely on any of that. This is the literal interpretation. This is the religious aspect to things, right? So once you're stuck there, you're lost, right? You take it literally, you lose the meaning. So we need to move beyond that. But I haven't heard anyone talking about it. No one mentioned it even. And I've spoken about this from the very start. If all flat earthers were united on 3 things, right, you'd see massive changes happening. But you don't get that. You get them stuck on 1 thing, maybe occasionally 2 things. But in terms of 3 things, I've very few people. There's a few out there, but very few talk about them. And if you got everyone united on these 3 fundamentals, then you'd see massive change. And one is, I put first and foremost, well, let me just put it, because of the date it's in it, 9/11 media hoax, not 9/11 conspiracy, not 9/11, because you get lost 9/11 literalism, right? You get lost in the Judy Woods or the Dmitry Kalazovs or the Stephen Joneses or any of these type of guys, right? No, we're looking to get straight, cut through all the bullshit and get straight to the media fakery. All the clues are there for us as well. Regarding 9/11, the only question I have, the usual, how many bottles of talcum powder were used on the day? It's all an act, right? And as I say, the movie itself was pre-prepared long since. And different stories regarding that, different pieces of evidence which indicate the exact same thing. And I've spoken about that before. I don't want to go into. It's very interesting as well. Very interesting story. But let me briefly go through it because we're talking about 9/11. Going through all of this sort of stuff on above top secret forums, right? Where you're finding out about all this conspiracy and you want other people to know, so you're posting your posts, etc. But I was just talking about, I came pretty soon when I started looking into all this in 2010 to 9/11 media fakery. And once you get there, you can't go off of it. Then you realize that, look, it was all a magic trick. It was all the greater symbolic meaning to all of it. And when we look at the literal, it's so ridden with holes, right? Which were presented to us. Everything we got to see, we were meant to see, but so ridden with holes. But yeah, we were also meant to see through the literal and look towards the greater significance of it. So yeah, when I was at that stage, pointing out 9/11 media fakery on above top secret, some guy came in, right? And just to cut it short, he had nothing to do. He didn't give a shit about 9/11 conspiracy in the bigger sense. He wasn't there to argue the point one way or another. But he said he had the point. He addressed it to me specifically. I think I was, for the most part, I on above top secret, all these threads are still there. I was, all jokes aside, a couple of other texts, because it kept getting banned, right? So you keep, certain things they don't want you talking about, then they'll just ban you. But anyway, just to get to the nuts and bolts of his story, I think it was a him. He said he was a counselor, right? In and around that time, and he had this particular guy come into him, and he told him this fantastic story, and I had just reminded him of it based on what I was saying in the thread in question. And basically the story was that he had this ex-prisoner come in who he was to talk to or to talk with and counsel and sort of reintegrate into life. And the guy had this fantastical story to tell that he had witnessed 9/11 in some sort of mad time warping episode a couple of years beforehand, before it actually came to pass on the television. And he said down to every detail, it was the same what he saw on the television. So his story, the guy was relating to me, was that he was in prison, and they came in, just paraphrasing, just giving you a general idea, come in one day looking for volunteers to go out and participate in one day long program somewhere or other. So they got a busload anyway, volunteers, a day out from the prison. They were taken into somewhere and on a bus ride, and they came to the end of that and were taken into a room, just sat down. They just thought they were sat down, had tea, biscuits or whatever, waiting to take up the task that they were going to do. When on the television, again, let me just clarify that. This is the story that the counselor was telling me that this prisoner told him. So this was 2 years or so before 9/11. And on television then came what we saw on our televisions broadcasted live on 9/11 itself, right? And the guy in question thought he was in some sort of a time warp. He thought he was special in some sort of way, that he was sort of privy to some parallel universe sort of shit. And he saw everything 2 years beforehand. And then, lo and behold, 2 years afterwards, when it happened, he went around telling everybody, but when it happened then, there it happened again. So his mind must have been jelly, right? He mustn't know what to make of it. But it's pretty simple. What happened was the movie was prepared in advance. They used the prisoners as a sort of a test audience, right? And no better than a group of prisoners, I remember thinking, because even if you went out, these prisoners went out and told someone, people just write them off as being crazy or had a particularly disturbing experience in prison, like we all know goes on in prisons and all this sort of stuff. So perfect, perfect to hide the deception there. Hey, Brand. Perfect to hide that deception. So an amazing story, and it just clarified to me that, yeah, we were dealing with something pre-prepared for us and presented to us as live. And that's the position I've been in since 2012, really and truly, but I wouldn't even say 2 months after looking into it. Once you just get that sniff of fakery, then you can't go back from it. And the disappointing thing is, I guess all this time later, there's so many people who are either unaware, pretending not to be aware, or will not deal with this whole idea of 9/11 media hoax, right? It's clearly a hoax, but as I say, the greater significance is in the symbolism. The sun is front and center in 9/11. When we think of Building 7, that's the route many take into conspiracy world, right? Because it was presented to us. Nothing hit Building 7, yet it came down like a ton of bricks, in free fall speed, impossible. Well, we're being said and led, right? But Building 7, if you look at it, it is the Solomon building, right? And it was the last to come down at sundown, right? Funny enough, by 5 o'clock, 5:30, September, at sundown, last building to come down, and it was called the Solomon building. The Solomon, the son of man. So the sun intimately related with 9/11. But if you remember as well, the original plane or no plane, flat earth or ball earth argument was with the plane or no plane on 9/11. So, this intimate connection is there. And as I say, you don't hear many people talking about that aspect alone. Plenty of people talking about 9/11 conspiracy, but in terms of fakery, no. Once intricate in production of any movie, no deaths, right? You have many people, a big team of people working behind the scenes doing all of this. I think all of the top directors are involved. I think Stanley Kubrick faked his death to be involved as the biggest producer of 9/11, director of 9/11, and how timely as well. Eyes wide shut. What does eyes wide shut mean? The people who go around with one eye, you think, oh, look at that, they're all evil. No, they're telling you, right? This is all they're telling you. We are in a divided state, right? So you think about the H, rotate the H 90 degrees, you get the I, right? So one IB is when you bring the two sides, the two disparate sides into together, right? So there you have, what are you left with? A cross or an X, right? An X or a cross. So what you have to do then, like the Christ, is resurrect, right? Bring up the T, the capital T. So then we have the spine in the center, and we're top heavy. I think this is what the 9 represents as well. And, it is 9/11, but it's also 11/9. So it's going from the 1/1 to the 9, right? This is what is said, all the greater story within us all. We can sort of transcend. I think we're coming to transcend the material in some ways. It's not even transcended because we're not the material, right? It's just a sort of a suit that we wear. So yeah, this is the significance of it all. And we think about the two towers. I'm just going from my memory as well, that when you look at the map of the Twin Tower, you have an S there. You have an S and a dollar sign. The two three-dimensional buildings, when you look at a plan view, I should say, of the old World Trade Center, you have an S, right? All the buildings that were taken down, and the two twin towers then can act as the strikes through the dollar sign, right? And the S is very significant in terms of being half an 8, right? So two S's, an S and a backwards S overlaid gives you an 8. So again, it's like the E bringing the two sides together. This is why Jesus died at 33. It's the two sides together, and then it was resurrected, when the two sides came together. And this is what all IB means. It's just I bring the two aspects in together and then rise the crossbar. Sort of the scary front, the horror front is put there for the faint of heart, I guess. Whereas if you're sure of yourself, you can look into anything. And, you needn't be scared. And I think this is where we find our clues as well. Yeah, no one talks about these sort of things, though. You have to go through sort of private forums, specialized forums like Clues Forum. And I recommend everyone to go to cluesforum.info, where, look, pretty much all of the stuff that we're talking about now has been gone through, especially in terms of NASA fakery, but most especially in terms of 9/11 media fakery and Vixen fakery. As I said about any movie, no one dies, right? If someone dies, it's by an accident. So the buildings were cleared. for prep for demolition and taken down behind the scenes in safety. What was presented with a big, probably a big, you know, smoke screen put up on the day. And of course, we know that from the day that the smoke screen lasted, or whatever, the dust screen lasted for hours and hours and hours. It's ridiculous when we know how gravity works, right? So again, this was all put up as a sort of a cover, the magician's black cloak, if you will, while the real nuts and bolts were unattached or undone behind the scenes. And yeah, that's all we need to know about the literal. No one dies, and you don't see any blood in 9/11. A lot is left to your imagination. And yeah, again, we were all too willing to take it literally. And all of the conspiracy pathways, you'll notice that have taken you, that were waiting for you to go down, they all were entrenched within the literal. You know, when you mentioned any of the media fakery to any of these characters as well, then it's like they were oblivious to it. They wouldn't take it into their reckoning and incorporate it into their thinking. And now I see why, because they're gatekeepers, and this is their stall, and they can't sort of venture beyond it. This is your journey, so you can look at that stall holder and say, right, I bought enough of your stuff here. I'm going to move on and see what comes down the pathway. So that's 9/11 media fakery. Flat Earth is the next one. These are the 3 talking points. Flat Earth is the next one, of course. You know, as it's the second most important. And the reason I mentioned 9/11, everyone earthwide is aware of 9/11. It was the biggest event, live event, where for the first time in our lives, I guess, we were witness, in inverted commas, to the deaths of many, many thousands of people. You know, it was a traumatic event, and it certainly shook a lot of us from our slumber. But yeah, once again, it was an earthwide thing. So if the Earth found out that you were dealing with a hoaxed event, there'd be people pissed off. And another piece of evidence regarding that is, look, if someone belonged to you was lost in 9/11, and you start looking into it, immediately you'd be down this conspiracy pathway, and you'd be on to all of your relations, your brothers, sisters, your uncles, aunts, etc., to get their pickaxes together and get their guns and get their shovels and get whatever, their nunchakus, get their pit bulls, and making it up towards where Israel, you know, Israel is put front and center in terms of the literal, but also in terms of the Bush government, or, you know, just the government in general. There'd be thousands and thousands of people marching on. There'd be absolute uproar, but we don't see any of that. None of it do we see, right? So yeah, no one died. This is the best. And again, if anyone did die, it was by accident. We never get to know why. People did many different ways to fake victims, and, you know, people say they knew people. Middick is someone here. Well, he mightn't be here, but MIDIHC. He says he knew people who he never saw again afterwards. Well, I'm not going to doubt you. Let's take you for granted and take what you're saying is true. Well, how hard is it to understand that people can take a payoff? Like, people play their part, people are prepared for it, and take a payoff and vanish, right? Yeah, they vanish into obscurity, or, you know, who knows, they might pop up again in later psyops or later fabricated affairs. You know, they'd be the least suspected, right, of playing a part. So, you know, we just have to wrap our minds around these possibilities, first of all, and then investigate all the evidence that's gathered by these different collectors or collators. And as I say, 2 of the best, or 3 of the best: letsrollforums.com, cluesforums.info, and fakeologists.com. That's 3. So it is sort of continuous level of investigation into all of these different themes. And yeah, once we understand that, then imagine, you know, there's nothing worse than being tricked. You know, they can sort of being emotionally blackmailed like that. There's nothing worse than that, and that would shake the people out of their slumber. But you don't see many people talking about, yeah, the fakery. I think people would almost prefer it to be real in terms of the Judy Wood version of events than that everything was absolutely fake and there was no real victims. Although when they think about it, no, they wouldn't. But yeah, they'll still be pissed off. There'll still be a pissed offedness on an earth-wide scale that you've never seen before. So imagine combining that emotion with the, again, flat Earth reality. So that strengthens it. That enforces it. Then, you know, that enforces that pissed offedness. And yeah, you know, that would wake up a whole hell of a lot of people, and it would sort of be more natural then to sort of move from one to the other. If they can fake this, then why can't they fake that, etc. And, you know, again, lots of people talking about flat Earth, but limiting themselves to that and not going beyond that. These people, for me, are no good, right? Because, yeah, they're limited hangouts, they're gatekeepers. And it just doesn't make sense that they're honest. You know, it can't. Because as an honest inquirer, why would you set yourself limits on what you can talk about? This is a greater picture here, and each different aspect is just a smaller part of the bigger picture. Finally, the third thing, and imagine, like I said, all channels, all flat Earth channels uniting around these three central core themes, is a legal name fraud, right? And or identity fraud, if you will. You know, this is the most pertinent one. This is number one, because once we find out that we've been tricked by strangers, that's fine, right? Once we find out that these self-same strangers have tricked me about the nature of Earth, that's fine. But now when you find out that these self-same strangers have tricked me about the nature of me, myself, well, that's a different story. And my children especially. They're most afeard of the women out there. And, you know, there are a few very brave and, you know, very decent women, as far as I can tell, you know, around on the flat Earth scene, including in my chat here. As far as I know, Lady Onyx, Sandy, Sandra, you know, all very nice, reasonable, very decent people. But again, there's a limitation to what I can say there in terms of I don't know any of them. I have no faces or no personalities really to put to them. But everything I've ever seen has been sort of genuine, pure genuine, and sort of above board. But yeah, these people in power, I'm going to just put it like this: they're afraid most that the women will wake up because the women have born the children, right? And I'm not saying that, you know, necessarily there's that stronger bond between women and children than men and children, because men can feel that, you know, infinite love as well for their child, of course. But yeah, that's what they fear the most. The women wake up, and if they do wake up en masse, well, then you have a force to be reckoned with. But if all of these three things were constantly talked about, and we just say about the legal name fraud, anyone who's watching there could see I had a bit of run-in with Dell, more than a run-in really, and I guess I'm sort of provoking it in one sense, but I'm not provoking. I'm just saying what I'm thinking. And my point was, which I've constantly said, I'm not just picking out anybody, why can't flat earthers get united on these greater themes? Now, I'm not saying to you that you have to believe what I believe, but if you've come this far, then you can take these three things very seriously indeed, because they deserve to be taken seriously. So anyone to just focus on one aspect of it and forget about the other two, there's a problem there for me anyway. And yeah, that's what I went on to say to Della, and I got chewed out of it. I got muted, right? So I didn't get a chance to make my point as well before being shouted down. This bully boy tactics, and I certainly had no respect for it. And for me, I didn't need to really say anymore anyway, or to see anymore. And I'm happy enough to understand that he is a plant. He's someone put in place. When I say these people are plants, I'm not making any judgment against the person. They could have the very best of motives for doing what they do, right? In terms of holding on to that gate, because they're privy to a greater story. And you know, I'm not though. I'm not. So I can say all of these things freely. And I think in one sense, not that there's anyone watching here, like, well, that's not anyone. Everyone is, you know, whoever's watching is watching, but there's in terms of numbers, a great amount. But yeah, there's no restrictions on me. I have absolutely no restrictions, no affiliations. All there is he's given up on the cheese ball now. I'll give him the old, here, Brian. Come on, bud. Get the ball again, you little shit. Yeah, I get it. Don't you worry about it. Let me get it for you. I'll do everything. Will I eat the cheese for you as well? Will I lick the cheese off the ball for you as well? How about that? I could do that. Yeah. Yeah. You got bored there. You got bored and left it there. Oh, that would be desperate. Look, there's a hole in the ball. That'd be terrible now if I put the cheese in the ball. That'd keep him occupied for about a half an hour, actually, because he can't get at the inside of the ball. Okay, so that'd be sort of another distraction for him. He'll have licked the cheese off the outside, and then he'll go, hang on. A very strong sense of smell. He'll go, hang on, there's more cheese here somewhere. Where the fuck is it? He can't get at it. So he'll know, let his nose be his eyes, right? Oh, Brand. Good boy, good boy. With the cheese ball. Get the cheese ball, Brand. Good boy. Yeah. So I can talk about all of these things openly, and I would like other people to talk about all of these things openly as well, but they're not doing it. They're not doing it. So you get people, as I say, we're talking about one of them. Maybe some people talk about two of them. Dave Murphy, for instance, he talks about two, very close to 3 out of 3. He talks about two of them. When it comes to 9/11, then he was a witness, right? And he saw the planes, and he's leading you down the wrong path, then in terms of the literal, right? So these are his limitations. So again, I can point out that these people are acting their part. Where's the ball? Where's the ball? Did you? That didn't work. Give me that ball. Give me that ball. Come on. Good boy. Give me the ball. Bring me the ball, Brian. Go on. Good boy. Yeah. So at that pivotal moment, yeah, he'll veer you off, and you won't be able to put the pieces together then in the proper way. But I think that's all par for the course, right? Again, it's a game of clues. You are the one player, so you have to put your own twist to all of this. Remember, if you are a greater being, all this shit is easy for us. Literally, I think the moment we die, we look down and we go, for fuck's sake, I missed that. Look at all those clues that were there for us. So something along those lines, you have people put in place then to sort of control the argument, and you can get sort of wrapped up in that. As I was saying earlier on, I'm a flat earth since 2013. So to get stuck on the same things for years on end is stupid. It's insane, right? And yeah, I guess you've got to realize yourself as the individual when it's time to move on, and what else maybe you can move on to. For me, myself, well, I've come out of Aristarchus. I can't see beyond Aristarchus. I declare Aristarchus as being the ultimate answer revealed, but there's many other aspects to it then, you know what I mean? I was going to talk about Sirius and its relationship to 9/11. Another amazing thing, let me just briefly, where's the ball, Brand? Good boy, where is it? Another amazing thing, and someone did this on Let's Roll forums. If you turned out the lights in terms of when the plane crashes occurred, or when the buildings, more particularly 102 minutes after the plane crashes occurred, or thereabouts, plane crash, inverted commas, if you turned out the lights and looked at the star layout, right, directly over building 2, right, which was the first to come down in all its contradictions, directly over it was, when viewed from the archway of Washington Park in New York, which you can also see the Statue of Liberty, which is very important as well. The Statue of Liberty holds up a flame, right? The flame of liberty is, the island itself is Aristarchus, right? When you look down at it, the flame of liberty itself is the heart of Aristarchus, or the central peak of Aristarchus, which is that chevron that you always see. You know, the Nike chevron, or the NASA chevron, or the JAXA, or the Roscosmos chevrons. These are all pointing you to the same thing. That's all in recognition of Aristarchus, or the central peak of Aristarchus, being at the heart of everything, just like the Liberty flame is. But when you look through from the fountain in the center, through the archway of Washington Park, you could see the 2 twin towers. There's pictures there of that. Again, I'd have to look up that particular thread. But you can see the 2 twin towers. But if you turned out the lights and looked at the star arrangement, directly over at the exact time, it fell over building 2, which fell first. You had Sirius, right? The star Sirius. Now, I talked about letters. If we think about Sirius, remember I talked about the S earlier on, the S being half of us, right? So it's all about the 2 halves interloping. This is where the snake, you know, the intertwined snake comes into things. Did I say the 2 halves eloping? No, I didn't mean that. The 2 halves intertwining, right? That's a better way of putting it. And this is ultimately where we come out when we think of 9/11, in terms of the 2 twin towers collapsing, and up in its place then we have the one unified whole, one world trade. We look at the design of the building, we have upside down triangles with apexes inverted in a unified whole, and the upward pointing represents the male, the downward pointing triangle represents the female. This is Adam and Eve, right? So the material in one sense and the immaterial. So this is what the 2 becomes 1 represents, of course, New York and the WTC Center, the material heart of Earth, right? And as I mentioned earlier on, when we look at a map or plan view of the WTC Center, you have an S, and if you look at the 2 buildings, the 2 twin towers, they can act as the 2 strikes through the dollar. And if you notice about the dollar, it went from 2 strikes down to 1 strike now. So is an ISS. Is really any ISS familiar to anybody? But anyway, so through that archway, if you turned out all the lights, the star Sirius was directly above Building 2 the moment it fell or was taken down, right? And half an hour later or whatever, doing the same thing, the star had moved over this, what do you call it, Building 1, when that collapsed as well. So this is very significant itself. And Sirius plays a big role in terms of another fake death, Princess Diana's death, in terms of the Arc de Triomphe in Paris as well. This is all gone through by someone called Loop the Loop on Let's Roll forums. And very, very interesting. I think a man put in place, and clue is always in the name, Loop the Loop. This is what remember I was saying all the craters on the moon are one crater. They're sort of looping around. They have that sort of spiraling arrangement to them. And yeah, this man is a big clue giver. Yeah, so the star Sirius, and if you look at Sirius, S-I-R-I-U-S. So S-I, right, R-A-R-E-U, right, S-I-R-R again, sorry, S-I-R-I-U-S. So Sirius, right? So it's just telling you U-R-S and S. So you need to put the two S's together. So we have the two S's in ISS as opposed to the one S in is, to be or not to be. Well, yeah, that's what was I just drifted away, started thinking about the Liberty Flame again. That's what that represents. Yeah, the heart of Aristarchus, the central peak, absolutely certain of it, as all the chevrons in all of the sort of logos, or the vector symbol, I guess it's called as well, the Nike logo, you'll know it as. That's what it's all pointing to for me, the central peak of Aristarchus. And yeah, all of this comes into play with 9/11. So this is, you won't see this in the literal interpretation, right? It's only when you go beyond that. And as I say, places like Let's Roll Forum, September Clues, or cluesforum.info, these are all paved for you. They're all put there for you to follow the clues and take what you need, and then you can move on. You know, as I say, these people, Simon Chack, for instance, hates the idea of a flat Earth. Just hates it. When it came to discussing it, he banned it. He just said, no one's talking about that shit here. It's all nonsense. And well, you know, that's another giveaway, a dead giveaway. A dead giveaway. Simon Chack, we have the SS as well. But if you haven't followed that pathway, you don't necessarily have, I think you don't necessarily have to go down that pathway, because pretty much everything is encoded from TV productions like the Game of Thrones, for instance, the different books like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, for one, you know, very famous outputs, to many other things. Children's stories especially are very significant, you know, to piece the picture together. So we can all do that. There's many different outlets that we can frequent, but these are international sort of arenas, if you will. So something like 9/11 or something like the flat Earth, you know, you have international inputs and international sort of debate about them. So in there we can see lots of clues awaiting us. I think I'll give them the pig's ear now, will I? Hang on, so I'll play a song in a second. I haven't even been to the chat to say hello to anyone in particular. Hey, Brian. You want the pig's ear, Brand? Let me put the chair out again. Brand. Boy, good boy. Here we go. What's that? What's that, son? Yeah, do you want that? Oh, you would jump over that table. Yeah, look, you'd love it, wouldn't you? Where's the ball? Where's the cheese ball now? Where's the cheese ball now? Doesn't give a shit about the cheese ball. Look at that, look. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, you'd love that, wouldn't you? That's all you want now. That's all he wants, look. Oh, yeah, look at those chompers. Look at those chompers, look. I tell you, he has the best life. Honestly. That's his biggest worry now. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, come on, Brad. You're not going to get it like that, son. Oh, look, yeah, I won't tease him too much now, actually. Right, here you go, Brand. Okay. Here we go. Go on. Come on, make a jump. Oh, you got it. You got it. Boy. He has the belt now. You've got the ear. Good boy. Come on. Yeah, I won't see him now till tomorrow. Shit. Won't see him till tomorrow now. No more affection for me, right? We're used to it, though. We're used to it. We are made of sterner stuff. Yeah, that's just one avenue, right? You can go down with 9/11. Yeah, I mentioned that about the map, the plan view of the center itself. You got the dollar sign with the 2 strikes, and that has gone from 2 strikes to 1 strike. And so has the dollar sign, right? The dollar represents materialism, represents that S, that divided state, the material aspect of us. And yeah, on the day that's in it, this is what we sort of need to get to. Again, it's our personal journey, so no one's going to tell you what's what. And it doesn't matter to me who thinks I'm loopers or whatever anymore. It doesn't matter. It's sort of everyone's on their own path, and I guess I'll just say what I have to say and do what I have to do. And there's certainly for me a coherence to all of this, and it sort of takes us up to flat Earth and beyond. The bigger story is the inner story. As I said, the number 1 on that list of 3 is the legal name fraud. So we know that the legal name is a corporation, right? As a dead fiction, and this is all about the inundation of the waters onto the land. We are man on the land, and the pirates, the skull and crossbones, the bushes, right, and the skull and bones. 322, 322 is 66. So we think of the 6 in relation to the 9. Remember, so we have the lower aspect and the higher aspect. So this is what the 6 really represents, amongst other things as well. We can notice that the 6 is very like capital G, and yeah, but. Once we can sort of simplify things, we can understand a little bit better, I think, what might be really going on. But that's what the legal name tells us. We have the pirates on the seas, right? And we are then encouraged to represent this legal vessel on the seas of commerce, and forgetting about our true form, our true inheritance, our true natures, which are kings and queens on the land. That's what we are. So this is why the legal name takes precedent, because it concerns you. And without you, as I say, well, this experience wouldn't be, right? So, yeah, don't hear anybody talking about these things, or very few people talking about all 3 of them. IPS was someone who talked about all 3 of them at one stage, but never dwelled in it. And then he had a whole sort of dodgy persona to him. Very surprised when he came out talking about the 9/11 media hoax. But he didn't talk about it too much, and he led you away then on a fairy tale in other aspects. The infinite, even the name itself, Infinite Plane Society. You know, this is beyond our reckoning, and we can't deal with infinities. So there's no need for him to call himself that initially, because it's only going to introduce confusion to the mix, and that was his purpose as well. Another clue giver, but with these limitations. But as I say again, if all flat earthers were talking about this, look at the sort of traction you could gain. You know what I mean? If someone didn't understand it, then they could go away and get links from people. You know, go and look in the right areas and get sort of up to date with all of this. And it is a lot to bear. It is a lot to sort of carry. But look, we're coming into inverted commas reality, and we understand that the reality we're leaving was never real. It had no substance to it. It was all pie in the sky. So yeah, I think I'm sorry about that now, chat. So let me go into chat for a few questions. I'm gonna play a song then as well. There's so much I could present really, and I don't want to sound too late for tonight. Midik, how you doing, man? Yeah, I was just talking about you a second ago. You were saying you knew people on 9/11. Don't doubt it, man, and you never saw them again. I won't doubt that, but I just get you to bear in mind that, you know, it's such a sort of a massive operation that, you know, nothing is beyond the realms of possibility. And if we think about people taking a paycheck to disappear, taking up this role, well, I don't think you have to extend your mind too hard, like, you know, but you, of course, yourself can satisfy yourself or have to satisfy yourself as to the truth behind any suggestion or otherwise. I can't tell you that, but I can just tell you that's where I'm at. No one dies in the making of a movie. When you have thousands of people involved in an operation, you can get thousands of people to get involved in a hoax or a greater sort of story that's been told. But in a mass murder, no, you can't do it. You can't do it. It won't happen. Greatest event of our times, and it is a changing of the guard. I think we're just coming to see that now. If you think about all the equipment, all of the technology that was presented to us as investigators after, particularly after 9/11, especially the rise of the internet, which preceded 9/11, well, you can see that it was all choreographed, and everything we're learning now, and the what do you call it, the tools that we have now have been given to us for very definitive reasons. So that's for us to work out why. Oh, okay. Beliefs the Thief, how you doing? I just go through Spanish Chicken. How you doing, man? Sandy, 123, how you doing? Beliefs the Thief. Midic, nice to see you. I know you play music as well, Midic. Actually, I have to go to your channel, have a listen. I might play a song in a few seconds now and see what song. I generally tend to play same things over and again, but not too much. I sort of stopped working on my own stuff. I've plenty of my own. I've loads and loads of songs of my own stuff that I've never played. I probably won't get around to that now, but that's all right. But I might play another song in a second. I have one in mind that I haven't sang out in a long time. So yeah, Lady Onyx, how you doing, lady? Good to see you here. Jose, how you doing, Jose? Shout out to Jose. Jose shouted out the Dodo and Aristarchus on Nathan Oakley's channel the other day. I like that. I called you my friend for that, and I mean that. Yeah, you're doing. I saw your, what do you call it, with Soundly there. I'm sure you found what you thought you would find, which is a flat expanse everywhere. Soundly, of course, is an actor, and these are gatekeepers as well, because they won't move again from their patch. You know what I mean? They are privy, for me, they are privy to greater truth, and you know, there's hurdles along the path. So you know, this is so important that we need to know why we hold the views that we have. So it's only by having these obstructions, if you will, that we can work our way through to, I guess, our own personal truth. I think we're all pretty sure now that the Earth is flat at a basic level and stationary, but lies beyond that. This is the bigger question, and this is what we haven't to fear. You can spend time until the cows come home, trying to convince the likes of Soundly, all the rest of them. I won't even name out the names. All the rest of them, all the same crew, rumpuses of this life. But they will just still, stick to their guns and go through the same thing. And I think the purpose of that as well is to challenge that new challenge there for every newcomer into it, right? So as individuals, I think we have to move beyond that. We know the Earth is flat and stationary. Now, what are the stars, right? Can we nail down some sort of some sort of greater reasoning or reality behind the sun? Well, I think we can. I think we can. And I think ultimately this is all about us painting our own picture of reality, whatever that is. And we can look at the sky and get some grasp and lots of clues from it. For me, well, again, ultimately, Aristarchus, it's all about the one thing. So it's not the infinite luminaries, it's the one cause, the one source of all the luminaries. And it's not just that, it's the source of the barrier, you know, it's energies emanating, create the barrier. It's the luminaries, it's the, you can see it expressing throughout the clouds, the cloud patterns, repeating cloud patterns, earthwide. Every time I go out, I know what to look for. I can see the same clouds. It's always the same clouds. In a different formation and from different perspectives, and sort of jumbled in, sort of reflected artifacts, overlapping, overlaying. This sort of construction is going on. And it's the same thing with the moon. I mentioned that earlier on. So when we can sort of unscramble it, then we will always come back to the one thing, which is Aristarchus. And at the heart of Aristarchus, you have that hexagonal or hexagon pattern. And this hexagon pattern plays a very pivotal role in so many things. And I was thinking about the giant trees. Anyone who hasn't watched the No Forest and Flat Earth video for a while, rewatch it. and you know, realize that, you know, that's half the story as well. More to be learned beyond that in terms of fabricated history, especially. So yeah, but the hexagonal shapes in terms of Devil's Mountain or Giant's Causeway here in Ireland, that comes into things big time. And yeah, all to be found in Aristarchus. So yeah, Aristarchus can be seen expressing through the clouds, through the water, through the sands of the desert. This is what I think all the sands are, earth-wide, are the sort of the sawdust of the crystalline trees, right? And I do think it's all assimilation. So it's a sort of a simulated destruction scene or scenario. And I think we have our experience, and then we sort of exit the holodeck, if you will, which is the most real thing that we can ever imagine or experience. But yeah, everything goes back to the one thing. And yeah, we can see Aristarchus then expressing in terms of the layout of the ground itself and the constructs of the ground itself, in terms of craters, in terms of different geological features that we describe as arbitrary, or science tells us are the product of millions and millions of years of gradual change nonsense, right? So yeah, that's the external. And then Aristarchus goes all the way into the very heart of our being, in terms of our body design, our body structure. Again, everything points to the heart. Aristarchus is Christ, or as a perfect anagram, Christ is always pointing to his heart, right? The heart center, very center of that H, or the H and the I are equivalents of the HI cube. And I've talked about that. I've forgotten so much, really. But I've talked about that ages ago. We are the three-dimensional and the one and the zero dimension in one. So the three-dimension, the solidity of our bodies, the length, the breadth, and the height. The zero dimension, then, you think of it in terms of our voice, right? You can't measure the length, the breadth, the height of your voice, but it's still a reality, right? You can't deny it. So this is the three-dimension, and the zero dimension come together at one at the heart center. This is what it means to be human. But we have to recognize the boundaries and the scale and scope of our sort of container, if you will, the upper, the lower, the side to side, left to right, and what these things mean in the anagogical symbolic fashion. So, Jesus, is he finished? He fucking not. You know, we're here. Where is it? He polished it. Jesus. That was a quick. Now, normally it takes him about half an hour to finish those, but I guess look, he still had a sniff of the old cheese balls that are left, so he can have those. Yeah, off you go. Horse. Polish that off in quick time, I have to say. Yeah, so let me get back to Jose. Yeah, excellent, Jose. And I'm sure when you present your information, it will completely contradict the findings of soundly. But any of us who've been in this scene for a certain amount of time, I debated with all these people 2 years ago, know that they're just playing their part, and that's exactly what you're going to find. And these people will be discredited, and I think they're hoping to be discredited as well. So yeah, good to see you here, man. Jamie, how you doing, Jamie? You can't be serious. That's what I mentioned about, yeah, serious, excellent. Good to see you, Jamie. Yeah, Sirius, when we break it down, S-I-R-I-U-S. So we can take the I-R-I-U. They all just reference me, you, R, S-S, right? So Jesus as well. We have the two S's. So you combine the two S's by folding them in on one another, and then we get the 8. And this is the truth. And then we have to sort of, I guess, ultimately untwist the 8 to get the 0. But there we have the material and the immaterial. And this is what we are. As I say, we're not the body. We're not one in this human form. We're not one or the other. We're both. But ultimately, we are the one, which is the 0, which is the 0 dimensions. We don't have a solidity to us. This is sort of part of the construct. So, yeah, good to see you. Spurs, how you doing, Spurs? Good to see you, man. Okay. Any questions, lads? Just let me know. I will keep. I've nothing spoken about, but I might come on again, maybe tomorrow or the day after. Just get a few more details thrown in. I'm not going to stay too long tonight. So I'll play a song and maybe just go into chat then for a while. And is there any point in me showing the pictures? I have so many pictures to show. I really do. Selecting all of these things, you know, I'm just seeing the same thing everywhere. ARISTARCHUS expressing everywhere, from the nearest stars to the most distant stars, from the planets, you know, again, to features on the Earth, the craters on the Earth, all these geological fashions, and it's impossible that they're not connected, right? So this is what leads me to say what I have to say about ARISTARCHUS, even though in terms of solid proof, I'm not going to be able to lay that out for you. I guess it would take a documentary or something. Okay, let me just get the lyrics to this and I'll sing that before it gets too late. Okay. It's pissing rain outside tonight. It's miserable. For the first time today, it was sort of cold. So the winter is definitely coming back in as the sun moves away from us. The sun has a limited throw. I mentioned this loads of times. The sun is a reflection itself. It's observer-dependent reflection off of a contoured, watery electromagnetic barrier above. And all it's doing is it has a limited throw, and it's just moving closer or away from us against the barrier in terms of its reflection. It has the same reflection point for anyone who can see it, but we just experience it because it's omnipresent everywhere. And all right, I think I know most of the words. Let me get this is called Acadian Driftwood, and for me it's a flat earth song, and it's talking about the destruction of the giant trees, right? Amongst other things, and that's given away in the title itself, Driftwood. You know, what is the true wood? So anyway, hopefully I remember the chords to it now. Over and the spirit was broken. The hills were smoking as the men withdrew. Stood on the cliffs, oh, we watched the ships slowly sinking to their rendezvous. They signed a treaty and our homes were taken. Loved ones forsaken, didn't give one damn. Try to raise a family, end up the enemy. Oh, I went down on the plains of Abraham. Acadian driftwood, gypsy tailwood, all my home, the land of snow. Canadian cold front moving in. What a way to ride, oh, what a way to go. Then some returned to the motherland. The high command had them cast away. Some stayed on to finish what they started. They never parted, just built that way. We had kin living south of the border. They're a little older than they've been around. They would and the later life is a whole lot better. So put up your sticks, chillin' and come on now. Acadian driftwood, gypsy tailwood, they call my home, land of snow. cold front moving in. What a way to ride, oh, what a way to go. 50 under zero when the day became a threat. My clothes were wet and I was drenched to the bone. Been out ice fishing, too much repetition makes a man wanna move. Go home his now. We sailed on the docks, heading for St. Pierre. Nothing to declare, all we had was gone. Broke down along the coast, yeah, what hurt the most? The people there said, you gotta keep moving on. The Canadian driftwood, gypsy tailwind, they call my home the land of snow. Canadian cold front moving in. What a way to ride, oh, what a way to go. Everlasting summer filled with ill content. This government had us walking in chains. This ain't my turf, oh, this ain't my season. Can't think of one good reason to remain. Worked up and the ship up goes down in New Orleans. It was evergreen up until the flood. You could call it a no man, point you where you're going. Set my compass north, I got money in the blood. In the wood, gypsy tailwind, they call my home the land of snow. Canadian cold front moving in. What a way to ride, oh, what a way to go. Say to Acadia, je demande du prix. La neige Acadia et de l'âme au soleil. J'arrive Acadia, tidelam, tidelam, tidelam. J'arrive Acadia, tidelam, tidelam, tidelam. J'arrive Acadia, tidelam, tidelam, tidelam. J'arrive Acadia. Nice, nice. Acadian driftwood, excellent. Acadia, right? And set my compass north. I got winter in my blood. This is where it's all at. The crown of thorns, right? Thorn is an anagram of north. Remember I was saying Aristarchus is to be found at north. Aristarchus, anagram of Christ's aura. Christ's aura, AU is gold. Ra is the sun. So Christ's golden sun. Christ with the crown of thorns. Thorns is north. Thorn, as I said, is north. But very excellent song. And that's from the band. And excellent as well. Another major clue giver. And had big associations with Bob Dylan as well. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. A bit loud there. And just again, go on YouTube and look for the original version if you haven't heard that before. Excellent. There's probably about 8 or 9 musicians, all in harmonious tandem, blasting it out. It's a brilliant song from, what is it now, 50 years ago maybe. End up the enemy over what went down on the plains of Abraham, right? Yeah, taking the Bible literally instead of interpreting it in a symbolic sense, and most especially how it applies to us, my reality, where I find myself and who I am, finding myself where I find myself. So, yeah. Yeah, excellent. As I say, set my compass north. I got winter in my blood. North is where it's at. And yeah, I won't be singing anymore, I think, for tonight. I could talk about it for ages on 9/11. I really could. I mean, but I think the bones of it are out there anyway. I think you sort of start to realize, look, you don't have to believe me. And for once, you don't have to go through the whole rigmarole as well. Do all the research from start to finish. And Midic, if you're about, investigating this possibility for the first time, go on to YouTube. Go on to any Google search, Vimeo as well, where there isn't such restrictions, and just type in 9/11 media fakery or victim fakery. Then you'll do away with all the bullshit and save yourself a whole hell of a lot of time and still come out at the same sort of place of realization. We can write off the literal, and we don't need to prove it to anybody. Just prove it satisfactorily to yourself that we're dealing with a story being told through the monolith that is the movie screen. So you can save yourself a hell of a lot of time. And I don't think time is long as well. Get away from that cushion. Sit down there. Never happy. Little shit. He wants another pig's ear. You get a kick up the arse is what he'll get in a minute now. Don't worry about it, mate. I'm just saying though, look, it's what I'm saying to anybody is that if you're hearing the idea for the first time, you can go to places and do all the reading, look through all the research at places like Let's Roll forums, Clues forums, many others as well, cluesforum.info, fakeologist.com, or you can sort of skim over it and you can go and get the meat and bones of it from YouTube videos, short videos that will give you the general idea and will allow you to piece together in as much as you need to the sort of the puzzle that's there for you, in terms of media fakery and all the clues that were given to us. We're always meant to come out the other side, and well, here we are 17 years later, and it definitely seems to me that so many people aren't out the other side, but I can't help that. I think lots of people are playing along and playing their part as well, but for any genuine ones out there, and if you are genuinely interested in this whole journey, I think you need to sort of come to terms with that. It's only then when you don't take the literal to your heart so much that you can come to the real meaning of it. And well, as I say, for me, ultimately, it's all about unification, come division, come reunification. And this is where two becomes one again. So whatever is in store for us, maybe today is, well, I think more particularly maybe 9th of November. But maybe not as well, because America is a Meru car. What are the chances of that? So I think everything that America is doing, even though they're the enemies of the world, they can still be the conduit towards this greater awakening of the masses, right? And I think there's lots of clues for that as well in terms of the fakery that's presented to us and how transparent it all is. 11/11, right? Well, I don't know. I think October is going to play a very significant part, but yeah, especially in November as well, because of 9/11, and really 9/11 to us means the 9th of the 11th lady, which is the 9th of November, and the Beatles are constantly referring to 9/11. And I mentioned about Michael Jackson being the dodo and Tom York being the dodo. Well, Paul was the original. Well, not the original one. Paul and Fall. Paul was replaced, so here we have the division, right? So all the Beatles were replaced, so you have the two aspects, you have the real and the fabricated. I think that applies to us, or the material aspect to us is the real, and the immaterial, the immaterial is the real, and the material is the sort of fabricated aspect. We can forego and leave the material behind and still be ourselves, and more even. That was the dog again. Yeah, you scoffed it down. Why didn't you take your time with it? Yeah, where is it now? Where is it now? I mean, honestly, no prudence, no prudence. He could have like gorged over that pig's ear because he loves him for, you know, hours. But no, demolishes it. Anyway, you're on your own, you shit. Yeah, so Paul and Fall. Paul was the dodo. Yeah, Paul was the dodo. The face underneath the dodo's wing was the face of Paul and Fall melded together. And I've talked about this. The drawings came out over 100 years ago with the Alice in Wonderland sketches. So the Beatles were designed on that. It's like Pink Floyd and the Dark Side of the Moon album with the Wizard of Oz. So the whole look was designed towards emanating the face that was placed underneath the wing of the dodo initially by the same hidden hand who was presenting us with all of these clues, all of this sort of story, this narrative. That's the way I look upon it, and that's going to be crazy to most people. But I've sort of moved way beyond that. I mean, I don't want to get stuck on that, because anyone who's just tuning in and hearing any of this for the first time, they're going, "What the fuck is that guy talking about?" But look, I've spoken about all of this on my own channel, and we've sort of been through the journey in real time, and all of these sort of realizations came our way. So clearly, the dodo is very significant in some sense, and well, for me. Yeah, it's the external story in terms of the dodo was discovered a certain year, 1598, which is 420 years ago this year, and 420, take off the 0 or multiply 42 by 10. The 10 is the x, right? The 1 and the 0, we get 42. 42 is the ultimate answer. 42 backwards is 24. So discovered, yeah. So the Earth had a certain layout to it. Then it was inundated with water. Now, when you look at the plan of it, you draw out a different picture, and that picture is encoded within the dodo. That's what the dodo bird encodes, right? That's the external story. And the internal story is then our divided natures. We're divided in two. Do is 2 in Irish. And again, as I said, when the 8 is the twisted 0, you put 2 8s. Just draw it out yourself on a piece of paper. From a distance, you could say that was do, right? 2 and 2. Infinity and infinity side by side. So yeah, that's the internal story. It represents our sort of division, and we are having this experience of division, divided from our greater selves. We're not divided from our greater selves. That's still sort of, how you say, lurks within, still lies within that immaterial aspect. That's what drives everything, but that's sort of been hidden away. So that needs to be brought out, and we need to sort of untwist ourselves, unbind the knots, right, and then realize our true form. And this is what the dodo comes into question. And dodo played a big part in the last Christmas Google Doodles. Been through all of this as well, and the whole theme of it was sort of division, reunification. And yeah, this is what the dodo represents. And again, any looking at the literal story will tell you that, look, this is all nonsense. So what greater story has been told through the literal, and it's only when you do see beyond that that you can get to the heart of matters. So that's my view. And I haven't spoken about anything. I'm not going to do it now because I don't have time, but I was going to go through Patricia Steer. I've been goaded into, and I want to do this, I've been goaded into apologizing because I slurred the good character of somebody. Well, no, I didn't. And I was sort of dragged into this, but the whole Patricia Steer transgender thing was put in front of us, fed to us on a plate, right? So if you're going to say I can't react to that, or I can't sort of investigate it somewhat, well, I'm going to say fuck you, right? Because it was presented to us. But I have seen through it, and I always thought from the start, because I knew Antonius Subarat's backwards is star I B us ARISTARCHUS. Only 4 letters different, which is arch, right? So if you take out the B, we can say B Subarat's arch, which is ARISTARCHUS, Subarat's arch, without the B, as I said. So these things are beyond coincidence, and I knew Antonius Subarat as another actor on the stage, team of people behind him, including this Glenn McIntosh. You remember him, Jamie? You know, but and he movie maker, knows nothing about 9/11 fakery. And Stephen Christ knows nothing about 9/11 fakery as well, funny enough, and he's an expert at computer graphics. I suspect that Stephen also wears facial prosthetics like Patricia Steer does. I was going to point them out tonight. I'll point them out the next time. But I suspected as well that this was just a sort of a cover distraction from a greater deeper truth. And I'm sort of reluctant to do it, but I've been goaded into it. And as I say, I have no affiliations. Only to my son, Stephen, my beautiful Steve, the creator. I guess my fellow man in a sense. I love my fellow man, right? But outside of that, I'm not part of any groupings, there's no restrictions on me. I mentioned it before, but I was thinking about it again. And I said, I should mention this again because it was significant. Down the road here, there's a Masonic Lodge in Limerick, right? And I was just walking Brandy, and there was a load of men, not a load of them, about 5 or 6 men, who were walking in. They were obviously going into some sort of a meeting. They were all dressed up, and for the most part, they were older men. So I stopped with the dog, and I just said, do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions? The first question I came out with was the flat Earth, right? And most of them were just kind of trying to usher one particular guy onwards, who was a bit of an older man. He looked all well-to-do, you know what I mean? And I was asking about flat Earth, and he was going, no, I never heard this. And I genuinely believed him. I didn't think he was bluffing, like, you know, he was protecting a sort of a lie or putting across a facade. He said, no, it's fascinating. And I come out with the usual things. I have a sort of a few things to say. And one is that, you know, the most ridiculous thing to me now is if someone asks me to point to Australia, that I have to point right down at my feet, because Australia is antipode, right, of Ireland, pretty much New Zealand is. I have to point right down at my feet and imagine all of the buildings, all of the cars, all of the structures upside down, and all of the people, more especially, and animals operating upside down. But anyway, he seemed genuinely fascinated by that, right? And for me, it's as if he didn't know about it. I was sure that most of the Masons knew about this, right? But I genuinely got the impression that he wasn't aware of that. But then I mentioned ARISTARCHUS. Honestly, it was, I can picture it. I can picture the reaction in my brain. I said, have you ever heard of ARISTARCHUS? And he said, yeah, I have. And he looked down. He looked down, looked away as if he didn't want to sort of participate anymore. Honestly, it was class. So I think, you know, lots of people are aware of the truth. And I think because every man has to have his experiences, you can only maybe get a grasp on some aspects of the truth, and then the rest is there for you. No matter how much you know, the rest is still there for you to piece together. And you know, yeah, I found that very, very insightful, very, very informative, that he was aware of ARISTARCHUS, but not the flat Earth, right? So, yeah, so that's what I'll do next time. I will go through this. Anthony Riley sent me a high definition picture. I asked him to send me that, and I said I'd have a look at it. I'll point out the facial prosthetics, but yeah, again, there's something deeper to this story, and I'll point that out as well. I already pointed out before, problems with Patricia's eye. In one particular capture, she had no pupil. Literally had no pupil 1 second, and a split second later, that pupil dropped into place. I never saved the video, but I did get a few snapshots. When I send it off, I think, I send off the timestamp and everything to just in a comment on one of their chats to Star Gods, who I knew had been talking about this, and Flat Earth Reset. So one of them, don't know which one it was, definitely told Patricia. And when I went back to the video, even moments later, maybe it might even been an hour, who knows? But you know, that same day anyway, the offending part was cut out. So no longer could you see the aspect where the pupil was absolutely, the eye was pupilless, and the pupil dropping into place. So, but I still have snapshots of that, and I also have other snapshots. I didn't spend much time upon this as well. I really don't. I don't look at their shows. I know that they're clue givers. Mark's Argent is Mark Sargent, right? Mark's Argent Pepper. Mark's Argent, who was a prepper, right? So that's what Mark Sargent Peppers. Mark Sargent Pepper's Lonely Heart Club band. That's our clue. Patricia Magical Mystery Tour, right? So be careful, she doesn't missteer you. A steer is a young castrated bull calf. These are all clues for us. So again, we can't take the literal. There's other things to be found out about all this. But Anthony Riley sent me that high definition picture, and I think he will regret that, because I found something, again, very anomalous with Patricia's eye. And as I say, I think it's hiding a deeper truth. I don't want to dwell on this, but I've been called out and I've been goaded. So I will do that the next time, produce the evidence. I'll produce the picture on screen, show you where the facial prosthetics are, and also, again, show you this problem with the eye. I've never seen anything like it. So I don't know what's going on. Don't know if some of these characters are even human. Whatever that means. What is the real reality to all of this? I don't know. I don't know. I know that I can't sit down and say, well, with any degree of certainty that this is normal and this is going to be my benchmark against which I will base everything else, because I know that that just will not work. Everything is far and away beyond anything that we could ever sort of imagine. So I'll be doing that next time. I just wanted to come on tonight, really, just to talk about 9/11, just to say, you know, there's more beyond the literal, and it's all things we should be considering. If you want links to anything in particular, I think the best thing to do is just leave them in the chat after the video. Anything I've talked about, leave them in the chat after the video is done, and I will post the links. Look up the appropriate places, and I'll post them there. Yeah, it's a very fascinating journey, as I said, and yeah, I don't think there's much more. I haven't got into anything. I really haven't got into anything. Will I show you? Yeah, I'll finish up in about 5 minutes now, actually. Okay, I'll just show you. I could show you so much stuff, really, and get involved for hours in it. Let me just go to some of the latest pictures or comparisons I've been making. Let me see. Yeah, okay, I'll do that. I'll show you that. Just give you an example, right? And this is just one of them. This is just one of them now. So I'm just picking this at random. So I think I found a way as well to, yeah, I think that'd be cool to share the full screen, because if I share the full screen, then I can bring up loads of different images side by side, as opposed to sort of sharing one by one. And yeah, I can do that, but I won't do that today. Now I'll do that next time. So this is just one image that I've been comparing. So here we go. So I hope you can see my screen. Sorry, I could have captured that better there. We probably move that a bit more center, but you have this outline attached to it, right? And what I was trying to point out, I could have captured that a bit better, actually. I'll do that. I'll redo that. What I was trying to point out is that fundamentally what you're looking at is the same thing, right? You're looking at the same thing here, and it's this outline that gives the game away. And these are the sort of confines of ARISTARCHUS itself. Now, when we look at the sun on the left, what you remember, think in terms of 3 dimensions. You're looking into something. You're looking into what looks like a crater here. And I've talked about the anus before, right? And the anus being an anagram of a sun. This is what you're looking at. And as I say, ARISTARCHUS applies to our bodies, the internal, as well as it applies to the external. But here we have a picture of the sun captured just by myself, just from a high altitude balloon footage video. And here we have this shard-like pattern, right? And again, the perimeter sort of defined by it, associated with the sun, and it's always there. It's always there. And in another capture and comparison, I've compared it to ARISTARCHUS on the moon. But here we have a picture of the moon itself as a whole, right? And you can see, not in great detail here, this outline attached to it. But I just made this comparison because this is the nearest star to Earth, we're told, which is Proxima Centauri, close to Alpha Centauri, right? But here we see the same perimeter style, what do you call it? And these are probably not lined up. This might need to be rotated around maybe 90 degrees or something. But I think that was probably close enough. But I definitely need to get a better capture. But I'm just bringing up this picture to give you an indication as to where I'm at anyway, that all of the luminaries will trace back to one source. And let me just point out the source as well. But you can see similarities definitely to all of these. And as I said, there's the sun on the left from high altitude balloon footage. There's the moon in the center, just from any sort of capture, normal capture, where you have this outline defined. And then here is just, I think, another standard picture. But generally don't go to Wikipedia. I think this is probably a snapshot from a YouTube video where someone is out with their telescope taking a shot of the nearest star, Alpha Centauri. Yeah, that definitely was. So these are Proxima Centauri. So these are the 3 stars. You can see very similar shape. But if we look at Proxima Centauri here, it's not quite circular, nor is the sun quite circular. When we look at it through the atmosphere, we get this illusion of a sphericity or circularity, but it's not actually. But let me show you what the source of all of that is. So if you bear that in mind, just to show you what the source of it is. As I said, I could bring up 1,000,001 pictures here, but I won't, because I want to get off now. Okay, let me show you the source of that. This is where the moon is the key as well. In Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey, the chief ape was called Moonwatcher, and he found the monolith within a pit, right? It was in a pit, and lo and behold, within a crater, and lo and behold, and I have that in a different comparison, lo and behold, when you put the crater next to our crater Aristarchus, well, you have a pretty close match. So all clues for us. So let me just bring this up as well. I'll show you the source of the sun, the moon, the stars for me. Let me. There we go. That's the amazing image itself. Here we have it. You all recognize that? Let me rotate that. Just let me remove that down. Once more, because this is the way it comes into my sky, and well, pretty much, a little bit before that. Yeah, what do you call it? Last year, for me, a comparison last year, which is very telling, was our realization, pretty much. When we look at this here, this is crater Copernicus, and we compare it against this crater, which is Tycho. Here you can see the outline here in Tycho. Can you see it? If you look at it from a certain angle, again, think in terms of 3 dimensions, but we're looking at an image. The moon is a reflection of solidity, so it's not solid itself, but we have all manner of reflecting artifacts going on. But yeah, last year realized that Tycho here, crater Tycho and crater Copernicus are one and the same. We're just looking at it from a different angle, different perspective, and you can see the outline here as well. Look, but it's not so prominent or prevalent, right? And the way I get you to sort of start thinking is, if we think of a positive of a photograph and a negative, or an X-ray or something like that. So we're comparing. They look sort of disparate. They look unconnected. But with a little bit of closer examination, we can see we're looking at the same thing, but just from a slightly different perspective. And the amazing thing is, like, this is it here as well. Look, and this is Kepler. This is crater Kepler, and all of these prominent ancient sort of philosophers and scientists. Ancient inverted commas, I think are given particular names in terms of craters on the moon, because these craters are full of clues for us, right? So this is pretty much the same crater here, because all there is one crater. This is they're all Aristarchus. So here, this is Aristarchus itself, most mysterious light or object we're said on the moon. Remember, I was pointing you out to the shard-like patterns before. Here we have them here. Look, I'm not gonna. What do you call it? Here we have them here, and they can all be matched up. And this is what we're getting. Everything else are sort of reflected artifacts. And just to show you why that might be, look over here. This corresponds to this, right? This is Herodotus here. And this is also present. You can't see it here now. Let me see. Can you see it? Yeah, it's just here. Look, just there. I could bring up a different capture to show you Aristarchus in detail, but yeah, this is just a reflected artifact of it. This is where I found the Milky Way on the moon last year. This swathe here, huge swathe along, and now I know what that is, right? Now I know what that is. It's just you're literally looking at a sort of expanded version of the same thing, and you're literally looking along here. Let me just say, let me go up to Aristarchus instead. Because as I said, it's all the one. You're literally looking along here. Look, see this sort of, what do you call it? That's what you're looking at. Because remember, everything is just this. Everything is just, even that dot shouldn't be in there. Let me get rid of that. Everything is just this. This Herodotus here is a reflected artifact of Aristarchus. It looks separate, but again, looks can be deceiving. It's just a reflected artifact. Everything else is a reflected artifact of the same thing. Kaleidoscopic reflection. This is the way I sort of describe it. So yeah, that was just to point you out towards that comparison I made between Alpha Centauri, Proxima Centauri, the sun and the moon. yeah, and everything is fractal as well. So that's what we got to sort of wrap our brains around. This is Herodotus here. Look, so we have Herodotus here. This is also Herodotus. Look that from a different angle. And I pointed out before as well, this phenomena called fall streak clouds. Well, I've compared fall streak clouds, which is a big, massive hole in the clouds, which takes this certain circular form, and I've compared it to this hole here, and we have a match as well. So that's all the things that so much more to be found here. Let me show you the Eye of Providence on the moon before we go. Can't miss this. If you haven't seen this before, this is fascinating. Definitely have to go then. Here we go. Watch this. I meant to point this out the last time, and I pointed it out before as well. This can be found in Aristarchus as well. When I mentioned you can find the 8, the G, you can find the Q, you can find the Eye of Providence, which is here, and so many other things. See it? Can't miss it, can you? And this is a NASA.gov image of the moon, I'm told. I'll have to find out the exact source of this, but you know, Des Cheaps and Eeps was suggesting this was modified in some way. I don't know, man. I just know that I've been using this, and it retains its fidelity as I zoom in, and it looks like the moon. So if there was some additives from NASA, some trickery, that's fair enough. But I've located this eye elsewhere as well. But look at it. Look at how this is the Eye of Providence, and you see this ridge here. I've also matched, see this little, what do you call it, little ridge? It's a reflected artifact. It looks very real, 4K reflected artifact. That ridge, yeah, I've also located that on Aristarchus as well. So you're dealing with this sort of, again, kaleidoscopic reflection up through the same thing, which is Aristarchus itself. And yeah, one more thing, just to show you the real man in the moon. Whether this has been put in here, I don't know. I don't know. I haven't been able to find it. I haven't looked too much as well in other captions. But let me. This is the real man in the moon as far as I'm concerned. Shit. And Jamie, you should definitely look up the Mighty Boosh and the moon. You would do a great impression. I've said that to you loads of times, and you sound exactly like Noel Fielding when he's doing the moon. Have a look at that on YouTube. There you go. So let me zoom out. Is Crater Tycho, and this is the area we're looking at. Let me just zoom in slowly. And I equate this to the face underneath the dodo's wing. I do, and there we see as well a handlebar mustache, right? Right, that's not very well done there, but there you see it. Do you see it? Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? So whether this is more sort of Photoshop trickery, I don't know. I've just been using this capture of the moon for ages, and if someone put it there, it does come from the NASA site. We have to be aware of trickery, but look at how amazing it looks, right? There's a real man on the moon. Okay, I better leave it there because it's getting late, and I covered a bit of stuff regarding 9/11 anyway, and talked my arse off without saying much, I'm sure, for ages. So yeah, I should be back on soon. I met a girl the other day. She was poor, and you know, I'd like to meet her again just because. I'm just thinking about her now. Her name, I was just thinking about the name as well. Her name is Kristen, right? So Christ in. But I'm sure I'll bump into her again. But yeah, I hope you're doing well, Kristen. And she was sort of homeless, down in her luck, that sort of thing. And it's very sad to see people who are down in their luck. But you know, what do you say to reassure them? I know what it's like to be in that situation. I'm not far from it myself, but it's very hard to take when you know reality could be so different. And the only consolation I can see is that, like every experience we go through, will end someday, and will only strengthen us. It will only, you know, serve to remind us and to I guess to guide us and to appreciate, I guess, our true form. And maybe that's the purpose of us having these experiences. This is an awakening to our true self, and you know, perhaps the creator has something wondrous in store for all of us. And you know, this is just a blimp in terms of everything. And, you know, it's the realization after coming through the muck, after coming through the shit, and realizing that there's so much more there. Maybe this is the great consolation. So I'll leave you on the note I usually leave you on, and I'll say thanks for tuning in. Sorry for not getting to the chat as much as I want to, but as part of the course, right? Part of the course. It's the usual. The guitar's a bit out of tune there, but thanks again for tuning in, and I'll leave you with the usual. Got left to do. Oh, the money that I spend, I have spent it in good company. And all the harm that I have done, alas, it was to none but you. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you. Oh, the comrades that e'er I had, they are sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they would wish me one more day to stay. But since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should mount, I'll gently rise and now softly call good night, and joy be with you all. Oh, the money that e'er I spend, I have spent it in good company. And all the harm that e'er I have done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. So fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. Good night, friends. Oh well, I love you, Steve. Till next time.